With that, there it goes, just notified it's going to be recorded. If you have any problems with that, text me. I'll ignore it anyway because we're going to record it anyway. But we're gonna just kind of move forward from here. So if you don't know me, I should have started out with that. My name's Jeff Alvarez. I've been studying turtles since that should tell you something already, 1996. So about 30 years. I know the species pretty well, but with that in mind, I would say that I'm still learning all of the time. I think I mentioned just at the introduction here before the recording started that there's currently about 197 published papers that range from 1870, I have a note here, 1872 to 2025. So more than 150 years of published work. I've read about 95% of those and contributed a bit to those, but all of this is to say that just because I'm saying it doesn't mean it's a rule or, it's the law or it's, irreversible or irrefutable. It means it's my experience and it's my knowledge and it's to the best of my abilities, given the experience that I have. There are other pond turtle workshops going on these days, and if you're hearing something from one of those workshops that's different from what I'm saying, I'm here to say that I'm not telling you they're wrong. I'm just telling you that what I'm sharing is from my perspective and my experience, and what they're sharing is from their perspective and their experience. And often these things can be site specific, so keep a lot of that stuff in mind. So we're going to just jump right in. Oh, by the way, I'll do this in sections, and I'll go for a little while trying to check the clock occasionally. And at about the hour mark, we'll take maybe a 5 to 10 minute break and then come back. This should last about 3 hours, which can be a lot, but we'll do our best here. Let's see, Ross is jumping in. Yeah, can the slides be shared with the meeting members? The slides aren't going to be shared separate from the lecture itself. I'm recording it and I'll share the recording. So I have no problem if you share that with colleagues or friends or whatever. I don't feel like the information should be a problem in itself to have access to. Effectively, what you pay for when you pay for a workshop that I'm involved in is the field effort. So there's a lot of effort that goes into the field visits. So that's what most people are paying for, and then access to me. You essentially get free access to me for as long as you need it. So yeah, we'll be doing the recording, and I'm happy to share that with anybody who wants it. And if you want to review it, that's perfectly fine too. I have several years of recordings, but I update the information every year. So we want to make sure I record it every time because new information is coming out all the time. Okay, I should also say the chat is super distracting for me, and I probably won't get to all these questions with the chat. So if you have questions, just take yourself off of mute, wait for me to pause for any kind of second at all, and just say question, and jump right in with your question because everybody should hear it rather than me stopping, kind of mumbling as I'm reading your question in the chat and then trying to answer it specifically. So just say question and we'll move forward from there, answer your question. You guys should be involved in this. It's a Zoom lecture, but I want you to be involved. So just, you'll see that I'll pause every now and then and just say the word question, and I'll try to just say, yes, what's your question? Any questions? Okay, good. So, okay, we're going to move forward here. So we're going to start with status, range, and ID. A lot of this is like, oh, I'm going to roll my eyes and check my email while I'm doing it. I can't tell if you're doing that or not, so no problem. I'm just going to move forward with what I think is important information. So the status, if you don't already know, this animal was categorized as species of special concern in 1994 when Jennings and Hayes wrote this little book called The Amphibian and Reptile Species of Special Concern in California. This book is available on PDF on CDFW's website. It still is very, very good. I think the information it's not updated, but it's certainly very accurate and well written. So I think it's a good resource to have. You guys should download that from CDFW's website. And then about 2015, 2016, they updated the book and made it much prettier. It's a really nice looking book, California Amphibian and Reptile Species of Special Concern. by Thompson, Wright, and Schaefer. Only Schaefer lives in California. The other two were from Hawaii. And because of that, they didn't really know the experts here. And I don't think of it as good a book as the Jennings and Hayes, the first one, the orange one on the left side of your screen. I actually think it's a nicer book. It's got beautiful maps, good photos. The information is good, but the references are super limited, and I'm pretty disappointed by that. I just feel like that's not helpful at all. I have both, and you should have both. Both are available as PDFs. They're both out of print right now, so you can download both of them. You should cite one or both of them every time you're doing work with pond turtles. Status, if you don't already know, the turtle range, the pond turtles, both species, range from the northern extreme in the state of Washington down to Baja California, and it's split somewhere in the Bay Area. I'll talk about that in a minute, but some controversy over that. So the northwestern pond turtle goes from approximately northern Washington down to about the Bay Area, roughly speaking. And in Washington and Oregon, it's a species of concern. California, it's a species of concern. The northwestern pond turtle also ranges through the Central Valley and the foothills. I'll talk about that when I go through the distribution. And then around the Bay Area, only through the Coast Range, the southwestern pond turtle starts up and heads south. And then currently, they're looking at trying to split off what they're probably going to name as the Baja California pond turtle, and that will go from about San Diego County south into Baja California. All of these are currently only species of concern in either Oregon, Washington, or California if you're northwestern pond turtle, and if you're southwestern pond turtle in California, and sadly in Mexico, despite the fact that my friends are here from Mexico, we kind of ignore what's going on in Mexico, but luckily Mexico doesn't. A lot of work is going on down there. So species of special concern. It is petitioned for listing. It was petitioned for listing in 2013 federally. We got the word that it would likely be listed in 2024. Then it went to 2025 in April, then in June, then in July. Now that it's sort of deep into 2025, we now know that it's probably not going to be listed in at least for 3.5 more years. Probably no listing at all for the next 3.5 years. So it is still federally petitioned. So it is treated like it's listed as threatened if you have a project. If you're a person going out into the field and doing trapping studies or research, you do not need to get a federal permit, but you do need to get a state permit. We'll talk a lot more about that stuff in the field, but the permits are required for handling turtles. If it's project specific, you need an ITP or an NCCP or whatever state permit you need, LSAA. If you're doing research or some sort of project, then that's going to require a scientific collecting permit. And if you don't have 2 years to wait for that, then you're way too late, because applying for that and getting it in any less time than about a year or two you'd be pretty lucky. Let's just say that. So the turtle itself, we don't want to just stare at words all day on the screen. So here was a bunch of turtles. I put a raft out, and turtles get up on the raft because this is a turtle that's in the family Amididae, which essentially means basking turtle. So this is a basking turtle. It has to come out of the water in order to warm up, to increase its metabolism. So warming up, sitting in the sun, is a little like a cup of coffee for us in the morning. It's really required. They also have to get out of the water in order to kill algae and moss and fungus and things that grow on their shell. If they're not doing that, they're going to become less and less healthy, not be able to digest. So we take advantage of the fact that they're a basking turtle by putting out basking material, and then we can count them. And in a photo like this, I can say to you very quickly, we have 4 males and a female. The female is the one in the back there on the left. And I'll explain why I know that in a couple of slides here. But just by putting out a basking raft, or you can throw a log out in a pond or a creek, you can tell a lot about the turtles that are out there, which ones are native and not native, what the age structure is, what the sex ratio is, that kind of stuff. So we take advantage of the fact that they're basking turtles. And I'm going to continue through some of this sort of natural history stuff before we get to the nesting, and we'll get to the nesting, trust me. So on the left side of the screen, when the turtle was first described back in the 1800s, we had just one species called the western pond turtle, but it was separated by two subspecies, the northwestern, so kind of the northern California, the southwestern, which is sort of southern California, and this big green hashed out blobby area, which was the intergrade zone. They knew nothing about what was going on there and would just shrug their shoulders and call all those turtle soup. So historically, in the early 1900s, turtles were part of the menu, and that's where they were harvested and collected and brought to mostly the Bay Area to be provided for restaurant food. And so they started farming turtles too, and that kind of mixed up the genetics and distribution quite a bit. So if you come to the right side of the screen, somewhere around 2013, we decided, we being Spinks and others from UC Davis, decided to look at the distribution of turtles genetically, and he found that the pond turtles in the foothills in the Central Valley in Northern California were northwestern pond turtle, and that should be its own species. The ones in the Bay Area and south all the way to San Diego were the southwestern pond turtle, and he was unclear about what happened south of San Diego County, but in conversations I've had with Spinks, he definitely felt like that should be another species, the Baja California pond turtle or the Baja pond turtle, and it just hasn't been split up very much. There's a lot of things going on genetically, and this year it looks like they're looking at the genetics from Washington into Baja, so we'll have to see how all this goes. But it might be kind of redefined in terms of the range. Then I have this little funny pink box in that map on the right, and that's really the new intergrade zone or the unknown zone, where we just don't know what's going on. And it turns out that that box even increased in size because what we're learning is occurring as I'm talking, including right this second. So now the new intergrade zone is expanded. It's mostly these several Bay Area counties and part of the Central Valley. And here we find both southwestern and northwestern pond turtle. That kind of breaks the rule of speciation. So if you have a species that gets split up into two species, generally those can't overlap because they would hybridize. And so the definition of species gets messed up here, or the turtles are just messing with us. So what we're seeing here, roughly speaking, is a couple of things. So if you go to the northern portion of Monterey and San Bernardino County, that's the line that U.S. Fish and Wildlife decided is the cutoff for southwestern pond turtle. But they did not know what to do or how to deal with the zone between their line and northern Contra Costa County. So we don't really know what to do here, but it turns out that both species, northwestern and southwestern, are going to be listed as threatened. So in the end, it doesn't matter. If it's a pond turtle, it's going to be listed as threatened. So even in the intergrade zone, it doesn't matter. We were starting to collect tissue samples from this area to try to figure out what happened, but our funding, as many of you guys know, fell away this year. So it turns out that a different project that was also funded that I mentioned earlier, that's going to look at turtles from Washington State down into Baja, is going to do the genetics, kind of redo it all and probably redefine where this line is. So for now, if you're working in the Bay Area, it's going to be complicated. We'll probably just use the inguinal scute, which I'll talk about in a minute. But generally, it seems to be an area where you can find both northwestern and southwestern pond turtle. We also do work in the northern Bay Area counties, and we're seeing that same thing occurring there. So this definitely needs to be cleaned up and figured out, because at this point, we don't know what species we have. So often we just decide based on a little anatomical feature, and I'll show you that in a second. And here it is. So there's a photo in your upper right. That is going to be a southwestern pond turtle. So we flip the turtle up sort of on its side, and we're looking about where, if you're wearing blue jeans, or if you remember blue jeans, they have a little funny pocket right where your hip bone is. That's about where we're looking. And if you look at that little tiny there's a tiny little scale in there. That's called the inguinal scute. If it's reduced, which means does it look like a grain of rice, or is it absent? It's not even there. That's the southwestern pond turtle. Now, if you shift down to the lower left, that same scale is in the shape of a triangle, and it's much bigger. So that's my thumb there. So it's about half the size of my thumbnail, a quarter the size of my thumbnail. So if this inguinal scute is triangular and prominent, obvious, that's northwestern pond turtle. Now these turtles came from the same site, so we have both species, and that's the site we're going to go to this weekend. So we'll see both northwestern and southwestern pond turtle there. If you can't tell on the lower left photo, there's a big green blob on the shell of the turtle. That's a GPS telemetry unit that we were using. I'll talk about that too. So here's kind of an image to show you what those little scutes look like. Again, the upper turtle looks like a grain of rice. The lower one looks a little like a triangle. On some of these turtles that we're going to see over the weekend, you're going to see a grain of rice shaped one on one side and a triangular shaped one on the other. And we just call those hybrids and shrug our shoulders and don't know what else to do. So kind of getting to the turtle itself, and we'll get through the adult turtles here, but this gives you a context for the nesting piece. We do talk about these turtles really casually, like everybody knows the terminology. On the left side is the carapace. That's the dome shape shell portion of the turtle. And on the right side is the plastron. That's the flat part that's on the base, on the belly of the turtle. They're connected, skeletally connected. All of this is bone, and the colors you see are really just a very, very thin layer of skin and scales that have that coloration. There's a lot of variation in these things. When we're in the field, we'll try to trap a couple of turtles, or at least handle a couple of turtles, and we'll talk about these kinds of things and the variation in coloration, and also how to age them. We're going to go through all that stuff in the field if we get any turtles in hand. Here's a couple more. These ones, I think we're from Northern California, so the northwestern pond turtle, and I'm just going to show you male from female. So the female is on the left and the male is on the right, and we know these things with a high level of certainty, not 100%, but a high level of certainty for the following reasons. Okay, so these little green lines are pointing out two things. The upper green line is telling you where the carapace, so the rounded portion of the shell on the back, where the carapace ends. And the lower green line is telling you where the cloaca is. The cloaca is where waste material and eggs come out if you're a female. So all of that comes out of the same hole. So on the female, the cloaca is really close to the carapace, or even inside of it, so closer to her head than the edge of the carapace. So really right in line with the carapace. On the male, it's much beyond the carapace. There are reasons for that. Specifically, the male has to touch his cloaca to the female when they're mating, so his has to be much further and sort of flexible. And so the cloaca is well past the carapace on the male. And in the field, if we get some turtles in hand, you'll see some of this. Now there's a funny little notch where the turtle's tail comes out. On the female side, that notch is close to 90 degrees. It's not 90, but it's close. You get sort of the impression that it's about 90 degrees. On the male, because his tail has to do a lot of moving in order to reach the female, that is really opened up and closer to like almost 180 degrees. It's almost a flat line. So when we see these in the field and we hold them side by side, there's going to be variation, but you get the general idea. And I don't think I said it yet, but we use multiple characters to define male from female, not just one particular thing. On the female, the plastron is flat, so it's not concave. That's what I say there, but it's really just flat. Not all females will have a flat plastron. Sometimes they have little deformities or whatever, but it's, again, a third feature among all these features we're going to see. On the male, on the right side, it's concave, so there's a bit of a dip in it. And that's so when the female is present and the male is trying to get close to her to mate, her carapace, the curvature of her carapace, fits into the curvature, the concavity of the male's belly. So we're adding all these features together as we go. And then we add another thing here, and that is these white lines are defining the length of the tail. The tail on the female is relatively short. Relative means you have to see a bunch of these to know. And the male's tail is so long it falls off the photo here. So males have longer tail than the females. It's pretty handy. That's a handy little trick. But turtles do lose their tails, not like a lizard, but to things like otters or mink. So sometimes you'll just see a stubby tail and you can't use that feature, but we still have all these other features we're going to use. And then the female, again on the left, the lower jaw area is going to often be mottled, so spotted or dotted or have little dashes and lines through it. And the males are often going to be with little or no mottling at all. And the older the male, the more likely that is to be kind of clean and just bare of any kind of markings. Younger males look just like a female. We'll talk about that in the field if we get any. But you have to wait till the turtle's about 7 or 8 years old when they're sexually mature to start seeing these features. When they're younger than that, it's just irrelevant anyway. So here's side face view, female on the left, very mottled face, male on the right, not mottled at all. It's a very mature male, probably in this case, probably about 15 to 20 years old. Female doesn't matter because even coming out of the egg, it's going to look just like that. A young male, again, will look like the female, but we're not going to worry about the young ones. So moving on to the next one, the carapace shape, so the dome portion of the shell on the outside of the turtle is very sort of helmet shaped on the female, and on the male it's flattened. And you can use that feature when turtles are just sitting up on a log or on a platform you put out there. The male's carapace is almost always flat, and the female's is almost always domed. But in this case, you would also look at the faces. There are other features too, length of tail, that sort of thing. So we're using all these things together. And even though we do that, at a study site I had for 12 years, we had turtles on our data sheet that went from female to male to female to male to female, depending on who was looking at it, because sometimes these turtles have tricky features and the people doing the examination just don't get it right, and it gets switched back and forth. But not a big deal. If you're doing turtle work, generally is there a turtle present or not? You don't necessarily need male from female, but these are helpful things to consider, because if you find a turtle out on a road or on a trail or out in the middle of a grassland, whether it's a male or female makes a big difference, because the females out in the upland are laying eggs or trying to find a nest site. Males out in the upland are just trying to find another place to go. Okay, so we're going to get past ID and distribution and status and move on to natural history. Any questions about ID, status, maps, range, that sort of thing?
Hey, question, Jeff.
Yeah.
On that previous picture, could you compare the sizes? Like, is the female larger from that picture, or is that just the angle?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's definitely the angle, but in general, we've seen when you reach the maximum size of a turtle, which really isn't possible because they have indeterminate growth, so they'll grow their whole life. But the largest turtles we find are males. It doesn't mean that a female can't get larger, because over time, we just have to find the biggest one and it'll be male or female. Generally, the females are heavier, but the males can be longer. So if you're weighing and measuring, you'll get a longer male but a heavier female. But in this case, the photo is a little distorted because the female is closer to us. But the males can get a little bit bigger, but it's not much bigger. The site we're going to go to is a sewage treatment pond or a water detention and recovery facility, they like to call it. But it's a sewage treatment pond. Those sites, turtles get bigger than any other location, and you'll see some big turtles there. And we'll be able to compare. So I'll set traps up tomorrow for everybody to see them on Friday and Saturday and Sunday. And we'll get at least a couple of turtles, and a couple will be males and females. And you'll see that they can get pretty big. But yeah, if we were looking at frogs instead, the females are always bigger at the maximum size, but with turtles, tends to be longer for the male, heavier for the female.
I've got a question too.
Yeah, yeah.
Do the Baja turtles differ from Southwestern?
It's hard to say. I've done a little bit of work in Baja. And we're going to actually do a workshop down there this fall, which I'm very excited about. In general, the Baja turtles are smaller on average. So here in California, um, especially at sewage detention facilities and water treatment plants, the turtle might be about 8 inches maximum length. So you're measuring straight across the back of the turtle. And in Baja, they seem to be quite a bit smaller on average, certainly for the same age. That's about all we're seeing, but they still have the inguinal scute that is very reduced, so it looks like a grain of rice, or it's absent completely. Other than that, there's still a lot of variation in turtles, but if I threw 10 of them in a bucket and, five were Northwestern and three were Southwestern and a couple were Baja, none of us could tell the difference unless we looked at the inguinal scute and tried to figure that out. And certainly you couldn't tell the difference between Baja and Southwestern. It's going to be genetic, and they're going to just draw a line on a map.
Thanks.
Okay, so habitat. Habitat matters because if you're looking for nesting turtles, you got to know where they're going to use habitat and what that habitat is. So I'm going to kind of breeze through this, but kind of give you some idea of the different kind of habitats that they'll use. Obviously, they use ponds, any ponded habitat, so a ponded area in a river, in a creek, in a pool, in a agricultural ditch. If they make a pond for watering grapes, or a pot farm has they build ponds to hold water so that they can water their plants. All those things get occupied by turtles eventually because turtles are kind of walking around the upland looking for better habitat or another place to go. So ponded water is ideal for them. They don't need it. It's in their name, pond turtle. But historically, none of these ponds, or very, very few of these ponds, existed in California. In California in particular, ponds didn't show up on the landscape until about 1950, 1950. So prior to that, turtles used creeks and streams and the occasional, deep vernal pool or, earthquake swale style pond, but those are very, very uncommon. Lakes are super uncommon in California. Most of the lakes we have are not natural; they're just reservoirs. But something like Clear Lake certainly would have pond turtles in them. Although we named it the pond turtle, it's really probably more like creek turtle. But ponded habitat, definitely important to a turtle. But again, rivers are going to be where they primarily existed long before people showed up. This is the Russian River. These big rivers with water control structures on them work just fine because there's always going to be some little spot that slows down and warms up and has basking habitat, which is really critical to them. And the turtle will be fine. They'll just use these kinds of sites with regularity. Coastal foothills and creeks, and by this I mean kind of high gradient, so lots of riffles and runs and whitewater and rapidy areas, this sort of thing. These are occupied by turtles, but two things occur. The turtles find slower water and they're not occupying these really faster areas, or if they are, they're just moving through. The other thing we find is on average, they're much smaller. So maybe about 30% smaller. So you might find a 6-inch turtle in a river like this that's 15 years old, but you'll find an 8-inch turtle that's 4 years old in a sewage detention facility. So they grow slower and their maximum size is much slower. It's just a harder life in this kind of habitat, harder to get food, water's colder so you grow slower, but they definitely occur in this habitat. And then again, any freshwater lake or reservoir. So we've built hundreds and hundreds of reservoirs in California, and we don't think about it much, but these turtles just pop up in those things. Often they're in the creeks associated with the reservoir construction, and they just switch to being a reservoir turtle. In this case, this is Clear Lake, natural lake, so turtles probably always existed here. It's ideal because there's lots and lots of fish. It's highly eutrophic, which means super nutrient rich, and turtles love that kind of habitat. So if you find, for example, like a cattle stock pond and it's green and warm and full of cow pee and poop, turtles love that. The more eutrophic, the better. That's why we find them in sewage detention facilities. And I've talked about this off and on. Cattle stock ponds, again, showed up starting around the 1950s. The heyday was kind of the 1960s for construction of cattle stock ponds. And turtles found these, even if they're out weird, isolated areas. They found them and occupied them and exist in these sites with a lot of regularity. This is really prime habitat for turtles these days. And if you think about the distribution of turtles being kind of restricted to creeks and rivers, when we put in stock ponds and reservoirs, we probably expanded their range quite a bit. I mean, they did all the work by walking, but we allowed them to do that by having all this available habitat. And the same goes kind of for these agricultural ditches. This is in the Sacramento Valley. These are really, really highly eutrophic, often filled with fertilizers and salts, not table salt, but the salts that are in the soils, and become really kind of nasty. You certainly wouldn't swim in this kind of stuff. But turtles exist in them with regularity. They tend to thrive in these sites. They get pretty large. They feed on fish and snakes and frogs and algae and plants, everything that kind of occurs in these little sites. These have drained the wetlands that were typical in the Central Valley, but now have become the habitat in the Central Valley. And then I never want to avoid pointing out the Mojave River. So the Mojave River is kind of a channelized river now in the Mojave Desert. And when I was standing here taking this photo in the lower right, it was probably 115 degrees. It's not a problem for the turtle because they just stay in the water, but they're going to nest in these upland areas anyway and do just fine. They're definitely declining in the Mojave River, but most of that is because we drain a lot of water out of it and dry the thing up. But if water remains present, if this gets federally listed eventually, and water remains present because that will be a requirement, then the turtles will begin to reproduce and thrive in this system again. So if you're looking in the bigger picture and you turn your back, that's what you see. It's just pure Mojave Desert, creosote bush, and sand and dust. And then keep in mind created ponds. This is a mitigation pond for red-legged frogs, but created ponds are super good habitat for turtles. I worked on a site that a few of the people in our workshop this time around are working on. This is at the Los Vaqueros watershed. And when they created ponds at this site, they created 22 ponds. Within about 4 to 6 months, all of them were occupied by pond turtles. Now that changes over time. Sometimes they leave, sometimes they come back. But building a pond is an effective way to attract turtles because they're often in the uplands. We don't realize that, but they're often in the uplands, either moving through if you're a male or looking for nesting habitat if you're a female, and then they're going to find these sites and occupy them. And then my favorite, wastewater treatment facility or sewage treatment ponds. Not my favorite to get into because they all stink and we all know where this water and all the solids come from. Every time you flush the toilet, they're heading right to this pool or pools like this. But turtles thrive in this habitat, thrive. This is where the biggest turtles are found. Turtles generally grow pretty slow, but if you put one in here, they'll grow 4 to 5 times faster than a turtle in a pond and maybe 10 times faster than a turtle in a river or a creek. So just based on growth rate alone, I would call this prime habitat. This is kind of the habitat we're going to be in. This is more specifically is where they put the effluent and let the nutrients sort of settle out. We're going to be in a third level tertiary treated facility where they move water like this to a marsh, and we'll be trapping and looking around a marsh instead in the field portion. So it's not the super stinky, nasty stuff, which is secondary treated. It's going to be tertiary treated, which is, if it splashes on you, you don't need to be grossed out, but it's still really nutrient rich. So going to be a good site for turtles when we get out into the field. And then this is a site some friends of mine have in Baja California. It's called El Potrero, where they have a really high gradient cascading creek that comes out of very, very dry chaparral from a kind of a mountain meadow. So the mountain meadow is about 6,000 feet. It cascades straight down some very steep slopes and comes down to some very warm weather habitat. And the turtles seem to thrive in here. Now they're pretty slow. Oh, sorry, I should have said this is all in Baja California. The growth rate is slower here. The turtles can be smaller, but if there is food and water and nesting sites and basking, all four of those things, then they're going to be just fine. And then I throw this photo in there. This is my old stomping grounds, Los Vaqueros watershed. The oak trees in the foreground are following Kellogg Creek. There are turtles in Kellogg Creek, but that's not what I'm showing here. What I'm showing you here is the upland. Turtles have to have upland. So by upland, I mean as far as they want to go, they need that. And I'll get into those details in a little while. But if you don't have upland, if you're just protecting, say, a small stretch of the creek, and you're not giving them a place to bask and to estivate or hibernate or brumate, all of those are things they do in the upland to avoid drying out or flood events. And I can talk about that in the field a bit more, but the idea is that they need the grassland, they need brushland, they need trees, they need cover, they need canopy, and they need all this for different things. So the upland really matters a lot. So if you're going to protect habitat for a turtle, you're going to have to protect upland habitat primarily for nesting, but also estivation, which is essentially like a summer hibernation, brumation, which is essentially a winter hibernation without being totally asleep. And turtles require all this kind of habitat. So we'll talk about the numbers that they're going to require in a moment or two, but they definitely need the upland habitat. So again, my old stomping grounds, this is Los Vaqueros Reservoir. Jonathan and John Howard, who are in our lecture here today and are going to be in the field, work out at this site. And all I'm pointing out with this photo is that this reservoir was constructed in 1998, roughly 1998. And prior to that, there was a little creek going through the center of it, and there were a few turtles in there. But when they put in the reservoir, they had to mitigate for the reservoir, and they put in ponds, and they put in certainly the reservoir itself, and turtles are thriving in lots of those ponds in the reservoir. But again, you need all the surrounding upland. If you just protect the reservoir, and that does happen sometimes in some areas, and you don't protect the upland, you're going to lose the turtles. So it's all required. Everything in this picture is turtle habitat, maybe not those two bumps in the back, which are Mount Diablo, but there are stock ponds even on Mount Diablo, and there are turtles in those that I've surveyed for. So what you see is what you need as much as possible. And we'll give you numbers in a few minutes. Here's a little creek, and we'll talk about the upland numbers needs here. So this this pool in this creek has western pond turtle in it, quite a good number. And when we initially think about a site like this, we're thinking about the water. We look for turtles, we go to the water, but the turtles need the upland, which is what I keep saying. So generally speaking, what we're looking at is like about 150 meters was what we thought turtles required. All the nesting, all the hibernation, the brumation, the estivation, all of that would be occurring in 150 meters. That was the sort of the old school vision of what turtles needed. So if you can protect 150 meters, which quite frankly is rare, then you would probably protect all the habitat the turtles need. It turns out that this number is very different than what we realize. So now that lots of research has occurred, this number, 150 meters, is the average area needed, not the maximum, not the ultra, like, oh, this is the peak number. This is the average. So if you are using the average number, you're going to miss out on lots of turtle habitat that is super valuable and required by the turtle. The new number we're going to use, and for some of you it's going to be hard to believe, but this is going to be it, is up here, 500 meters. So 500 meters is the maximum distance we know currently for nesting for pond turtles. And I'll just say pond turtles again to cover northwestern and southwestern. So a colleague of mine, Colleen Delvecchio, and I reviewed all of the pond turtle nesting habitat needs, and we came up with a table, and we measured out the maximum, and that was found by our friend Barry, who found pond turtles, and I'm just going to look at my own table here from my own paper. 457 meters was his maximum. So the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, which has not listed the turtle yet, but will, has a survey protocol and minimization measures packet that I've reviewed. It's about 25 pages. And there we're going to say that everything within 500 meters of an occupied aquatic site will be considered turtle habitat. Turtle habitat meaning estivation, brumation, and nesting, and also just sort of general moving. So you might think, well, you know, we're going to put in our Walmart 200 feet away, 70 meters from the creek. That should be enough. The requirements, I'm sure they'll do just fine, and maybe they will. But the mitigation is going to be out to 500. So even if you put it in close, you're going to have to mitigate for the loss all the way out to 500 meters. 500 meters, I think, is what we know now. In 5 more years or 10 more years, maybe somebody on this workshop is going to find a turtle nesting, 700 meters out. And I think that's going to be pretty exciting and sort of, one of those reasons to slap your forehead too, because that's not going to be easy to deal with in the world of consulting for sure. The average, so we looked at the maximum distance reported by about 20 authors who have published papers, and the average is about, I'm going to look at my own notes, 150 meters. So you're going to have to justify not protecting, nesting habitat for whatever distance you decide is appropriate. But the average, so most of them are occurring about 150 meters out, but the maximum again is 500 meters, and that's the number the service is going to want to use. And if you aren't surprised by that, you should be. That's a long way out. That's a third of a mile. Okay, I'm going to talk about predators and general threats. Any questions about habitat? Habitat seems easy for turtles. It's everything. If it's wet, they're probably there. If it's dry, they probably need it. Okay, so predators. This is sort of a circle of different kinds of predators, but there are lots and lots of predators of turtles depending on the turtle size. So I'll start up here in the upper left with the skunk. Skunks are the primary predator of nests. So if you get a nest and you find egg fragments outside of a little hole in the ground, that was probably a skunk. They're following nesting turtles or sniffing around in the nesting turtle areas and digging out nests and eating all the little eggs, usually within 1 or 2 days of them being laid. And hopefully we'll see some predated nests out on our site over the weekend. I say hopefully not for the turtle's sake, but just for illustrative purposes. I'm going to go kind of clockwise here, go across the top. Turtle predators do include people. So turtles are still poached today. You can recreational fish for red-eared sliders in California. I think the take number, the maximum bag limit is, there's no maximum bag limit. You can take as many as you want. Used to be 20, now it's unlimited. So people will trap turtles. They won't differentiate the species. They just take them and eat them. So people are still a potential predator of turtles. And as we're moving along, raccoons will try to get hatchlings. And there's a whole story about hatchlings I'll tell you about in a minute. But hatchlings go from a nest site when they hatch out and then emerge from the nest. And they have to get to an aquatic site. That's when the raccoons get them. Because it takes a couple of weeks for them to get from a nest to the aquatic site. And the raccoons are just ready to get them. Once they get into the aquatic site, then they have, in the lower left, largemouth bass are going to get them. Certainly almost anything that eats animal protein will eat a baby turtle because they're only the size of a quarter. They're very, very soft. So fish, frogs, Mink, otters. I have a photo of an otter there, obviously. Certainly the raccoons. People collect them because they're so darn cute. Coyotes will take turtles that are trying to move into the upland to nest, or they're moving between aquatic sites. Probably the primary predator of adult turtles is going to be otters. The site we're going to go to has a population of 14 otters, and the site's only 30 acres. So the otter pressure is super high. They generally just take legs and heads and tails and then leave a shell with, all the guts and stuff remaining, because they generally don't break into the shell. But a determined otter is going to do what a determined otter wants to do. They seem really cute and friendly and fun to watch, but if you're a turtle, none of that is true. We'll see lots of otter sign, lots of sprint stations and poop and rubbing posts and stuff like that. We may even see some otters in the field. Hopefully not, because they'll just chase the turtles into hiding. But we'll see. But lots and lots of predators. But with the tiny little turtles, a predator can be a jay or a crow or a raven. I mean, even a shrike. So the little tiny turtles, everybody's a predator. Here's probably the primary threat for turtle populations. So bullfrogs are going to eat the baby turtles with regularity, and that means given 6 or 8 years of bullfrog presence, you have eliminated the potential for recruitment. So no little turtles become big turtles that can reproduce and replace themselves. The bullfrogs just take them out one after another. The only positive note is, since we have 18 non-native turtles, they're all reproducing too. Those non-native turtles are getting eaten by bullfrogs as well. But we regularly shoot bullfrogs, open them up to see what's in their stomach, and we'll pull out little baby turtles. So this is the biggest threat. There was a really fairly well done paper, a little bit complicated in the modeling aspect of it, but came out of Yosemite showing that the removal of bullfrogs essentially revived a population of pond turtles at that site, and has saved turtles in Yosemite by removing bullfrogs. We've seen the same thing at Los Vaqueros and at Stewart Pond and at other sites where we've done bullfrog control, where once you start on bullfrog control, you start seeing baby turtles right away. Because all you need to do is reduce the population of bullfrogs. But if you don't reduce the population of bullfrogs, they're going to eat almost every single baby turtle, and anybody that remains is going to get eaten by an otter or a raccoon or something else. So primary threat right here, even beyond people. People collect turtles, run them over, all these sorts of things that are crazy for turtles, but this is the primary threat. Probably the number 2 threat is barriers. Development certainly is going to take out habitat. That's not good. But turtles can get through a lot of stuff. But barriers become an impediment to turtle movement to go from aquatic sites to upland sites where they can nest. And the barrier isn't the house, it isn't the yard, it isn't the cat or the dog, it isn't even the kids, although they can be a problem. If you're a parent, well, I don't need to apologize. You get it. Despite all the collecting and the running over and all that stuff, this isn't the biggest problem. The bigger problem is the curb. So you put in all this housing and roadways, and then you put a curb in the way, and the turtles can't get up over a 90-degree curb very well. So they walk along the curb, fall into the sewer, the storm drain, and then they're channelized over to the wastewater treatment facility, where they likely don't survive. So it is the barrier that causes the problem. Freeways are a barrier, curbs are a barrier, big concrete structures, K-rail is a barrier. All these kinds of things can really, really impact turtle movement. So the barriers are number 2, believe it or not number 1, even though they can be in some areas. Number 1 being the bullfrog, number 2 being the barrier. Roadways are also a barrier. Cars are not friendly with turtles. I've seen a few squished turtles. Not pretty. There's something in my brain that says you're not supposed to see the inside of a turtle. And if you see one run over, you definitely see the inside of a turtle. It's a bit nasty. I don't really understand how somebody hits a turtle. They're not easy to miss. Sorry, that's not the way I mean to say it. They're easy to see on the road. So the general feeling I would have is that if there's a turtle squished on the road, somebody just may have been snickering as they saw it and then hit it. You wouldn't necessarily want to hit a turtle on the road. It's a big thing. It could be a rock and you just don't even know it. So the number 3 problem for turtles, another threat, is non-native competitors. And I've talked about this a couple of times, but I want to really push this point home. Non-native competitors are the number 3 threat to turtles because they compete for basking. So a turtle lives in an aquatic site, needs to get out of the water. I shared that on the first slide of the turtles that are sitting up on a raft. They need to get out of the water in order to dry out, to warm up, to kill all the bacteria and fungus, and also to warm their body enough to be able to digest food and to be active. And turtles like this, the red-eared slider is the dominant competitor, are going to outcompete turtles, our pond turtle, for basking because red-eared sliders evolved with a dozen other native species, and they compete with one another, and it's normal for them. Our turtle competed with itself. No other turtles existed where our turtle existed. So they're not used to scuffling and fighting and, kind of pushing each other off of basking habitat to take over a site. They just climb up and kind of stack on top of each other and everybody's happy. But red-eared sliders and other non-native turtles, they are going to compete. They're going to knock turtles off. Usually that's the way to go. It's sort of king of the hill if you remember that as being a kid. Maybe that's an old, out-of-date reference now. But the point is, this is number 3. If you can get rid of the non-native turtles, that's going to be a big, big benefit for our pond turtle. When our turtle gets listed by the Fish and Wildlife Service, in that 25-page document I mentioned for minimization measures for turtles, it will say, excuse me, it will say that you're going to be required to do some trapping, which means you'll have to have a permit. We'll talk about that in the field. You're going to be required to do some trapping, and all of the non-native turtles have to be killed. Now, I'll admit openly, turtle's just one of those animals I don't want to kill. I'll shoot a bullfrog, I don't have a problem. I'll shoot a pig, I don't have a problem with that. But turtle feels different for me. Maybe I can take him over to my friend John Howard. But in general, it's just not something I want to do. So I do already know a couple of vets that will just inject them. That is the number 1 way to kill a turtle. You inject them with, I think it's sodium barbital or something similar. And you can kill a turtle pretty effectively. They're in the guidelines the service has, it gives you specific methods for killing a turtle. Almost all of them require some drug. So almost all of them will require a vet. And that is going to cost about $50 a turtle. So when you're doing some sort of mitigation measure, or you have to trap turtles, or you're going to do a creek bypass or something like that, and you're putting fencing up and you have to collect turtles and move them. If you get non-natives, make sure you put in a lot of vet fee for all the non-native turtles that are going to have to be killed. It's going to be a requirement. So even if you're one of those people who, like my wife, doesn't want anything killed, it's not going to change anything. Somebody on your crew is going to have to do it. So it should be each of us. We should all take responsibility for this. I don't like it myself, but now that I have a couple of vets that'll do it, I feel a little less guilty. So here's that competitor issue that I'm talking about. Only one turtle in this photo is Western pond turtle. All the rest are non-natives, and they're taking over the basking habitat. And like I said, they'll just shove our pond turtle right off, and they take over in a way that is overwhelming to our native turtles, who then become essentially like a bit saturated with water. Algae grows on their shell. They don't remain healthy, and eventually they don't reproduce, and we lose our turtles. So that's why the competition issue is a big one. So I'm going to talk a little, just very, very briefly about the sympatric species, so species that co-occur with our turtle, because it does affect management. But if you have any questions, let's just jump into that. And we'll actually take a little bit of a break here. Let's take, we'll answer questions, and then we'll take a 10-minute break to get some coffee. I'm sure some of you are already asleep. So any questions, and then we'll take a 10-minute break.
Hi,
I had a
Jeff.
quick
Okay.
Yeah, feel free. Somebody just start.
I had a question about pig predation. Um, I'm working the Diablo range, and pig numbers are crazy, and groups of 30 to 50 are common. Have you seen a lot of evidence of nest predation by pigs?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I would say two things. Nest predation is going to probably be accidental by pigs. They're going to come across a patch of nests and just eat everything in there. But it's going to probably be accidental. They're plowing through eating, roots and worms and salamanders and, lizards and lizard eggs and snakes and whatever. And the turtles are just going to be ingested incidentally. The bigger problem is when they get down to the pond edge, because baby turtles are going to bask right on the edge of the pond. They don't bask on logs or platforms you put out. They're going to bask right in that little wet mud edge, often at night. And that's when the pigs are down there and they're wallowing and drinking and eating, and they're going to just gobble up everything in existence. So the number is not quantifiable, but it's going to be a big impact. So pig control, I'm afraid, is going to be, on almost everybody's list for the foreseeable future.
Thanks. Yeah, we're doing both pig control and bullfrog control, so hopefully we'll start seeing some baby turtles.
Yeah, I imagine you will.
Hi, Jeff. This is Ben Delancey. I know we've briefly discussed this before, but do you know like any more up-to-date status information for the Western pond turtle population in the Mojave River?
Yeah, so Jeff Lovich does a lot of that work, and I talked to him recently, and it looks like there are a few groups, a handful of groups of turtles. So there's some good habitat in a small section that's very far upstream, and they seem to be hanging on. The difficulty is that, and I'll talk about this in a couple of minutes, when they nest, and they nest in very warm habitat, all the turtles that are at the top of the nest are at the warmest portion of the nest. They're all female. And the ones in the cooler portion of the nest are all male. And so in the desert, it turns out that all of the habitat is very warm. And they're getting this sort of skew toward female population that is not being able to be very reproductive because they have too many females, not enough males. And so they're not getting enough nesting to recruit back into the population. And the likelihood of the species blinking out in that area is relatively good. But it's going to be a highly managed population. So it changes all the time. And I'm being vague on purpose because Jeff is publishing a bunch of new stuff soon with some other people, and he doesn't want the cat out of the bag, but it's looking bad. How's that?
Much appreciated.
Hey
And
Jeff,
yeah.
I was wondering if vegetation can ever inhibit a turtle's ability to move throughout an environment. For example, what if you had a very suitable aquatic resource that was kind of the vegetation around it was choked out with like really dense, like invasive Himalayan blackberry? Would that inhibit their ability to move, or are they kind of able to punch through those types of environments?
Yeah, I'm glad you used that as an example. I wouldn't have thought of that very much. But yeah, turtles go through Himalayan blackberry like it's not even there, mostly because the blackberry inhibits lower the short stature vegetation forms and grasses and such. And so they just push right through. They don't have any problem going through that. And in fact, when we're finding females in the uplands who are nesting, and I'll show you this at the site we're going to go to, when we go to grab the female who has finished a nest, they dash to the blackberry because the otters don't chase them in there, and that's their cover site. So blackberry, Himalayan or native, is not a bad thing for turtles. The bad thing is going to be bulrush, cattail, this sort of thing that is high density, not for the adults because they'll just push through anyway. They'll find a way to put, they'll walk around the edge until they find an opening, or they'll just start climbing right over it. But then the little hatchling turtles can't get through it. And I haven't shared this yet, but turtles only feed in the water. If a turtle is in the upland, it's not feeding. So a baby turtle comes out of the nest, walks along, tries to get to the water, hits a big wall of cattail or bulrush, and can't get to the water, it will starve. And if it gets into that kind of vegetation where everything is, at a scale that is well beyond a tiny little turtle, and it wedges itself between two pieces of that kind of vegetation, it's dead. And that is probably one of the biggest hindrances to recruitment that is outside of predation or barriers or invasive species. It is that we are not managing the vegetation in a way that allows for small turtles to get back to the water.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, we'll give this about maybe 6 more minutes. We'll just come back at 9:40. Great. Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started. I know people kind of filter back in, and that's not a problem at all. So, I want to talk about sympatric species for a couple of reasons, and the first of which is that when you find turtles, you often find other species that might be rare, or endangered, or worse, fully protected. And in Central California, and that's what's kind of represented here, we have quite a variety of different species that you can find with pond turtles, whether it be southwestern or northwestern. So I start in the upper left with a giant garter snake, then I have San Francisco garter snake, two-striped garter snake. On the lower left, red-legged frog, California tiger salamander, and foothill yellow-legged frog. Each of these species is,
Jeff?
yes.
Can't see your presentation.
Oh, why is that going on that way then? It's, it says
I
I'm,
can see it.
yeah, it says I'm screen sharing.
Yeah, I can see it fine.
Yeah, same.
Must be on my end.
Sorry,
I'll
Thor.
see.
It should be 6 photos with some snakes and frogs and things. Okay, sorry, Thor. I'll have to keep going though.
I just fixed it
Okay, good.
on my end.
Okay,
Thanks.
good. Okay, so these species pose a couple of problems. One is that if you have, say, we'll just say San Francisco garter snake. Turtles are going to eat the San Francisco garter snake. So, do you manage turtles to protect the snake, or do you manage snakes to protect the turtle? That's going to really be up to the regulators. But keep in mind that what you do in terms of habitat modification can affect turtles. So if you're, for example, doing something for red-legged frog, like removing silt and vegetation from a pond, that has a real positive effect on red-legged frogs, and as it does on tiger salamanders. But it isn't the best thing for turtles because they like it real eutrophic and a lot of cover and vegetation and structure and that sort of thing. It should not impede your planning in that pond turtles will adapt, they'll move out, they'll come back in later when it's better, but you do have to keep these things in mind when you're doing this kind of work. If you're doing work, for example, with red-legged frogs, you also have to deal with tiger salamanders. Once it gets federally listed, the turtle will just be another species you have to consider when you're making these decisions about habitat modification. One of the things that I just shared during the break was answering a question about vegetation. Removing emergent vegetation in freshwater ponds, stock ponds, that sort of thing, can be a big advantage to pond turtles, but other species might like it. Red-legged frogs don't mind all that vegetation, but if you can't see the animal, if you're counting red-legged frogs and can't see them, then are they really there? It's a philosophical question, but from the agency's perspective, it's a zero. So we just say, well, take out a lot of the vegetation. It helps the turtle, helps the frog, helps the salamander. But you just have to be aware that all these things can co-occur at the same site. And in some places, they co-occur with regularity. You'll see, a pond that has red-legged frog, tiger salamander, and frog, and red-legged frog, tiger salamander, and turtle, and the turtle is eating tiger salamanders and red-legged frogs, both adults and larvae, with regularity. I mean, that's going to be their main prey source. But it doesn't impact the populations of those other species so much that they blink out. So they all just evolve together, should be just perfectly fine. But depending on where you are and which species you're dealing with, northwestern pond turtle or southwestern pond turtle, you might have to deal with other declining, rare, endangered, or threatened species. And here's kind of a list of some of the stuff that I came up with. That, it's not an exhaustive list, but it just kind of gives you the idea that you can't just think about the turtle specifically or its upland habitat and how you manage that. You have to consider all these other species as well. And keep in mind also that there's nothing on this list except the pond turtles themselves that pond turtles don't eat. They will eat all these other species and not have any problem doing it. Now we're going to start getting closer to like, okay, nesting is finally coming up. This guy's been talking for an hour and a half, and we haven't heard a darn thing about nesting. But you have to have a context for some of this stuff, and so that's what I'm trying to provide. So pond turtles are going to bask in order to warm. I've shared that over and over. As the breeding season comes, and I'll talk about that, the timing of that, the females will bask more and more and more because they're trying to warm their body. The internal organs need to be warmed up to generate all of the to motivate the physiology behind reproduction. The males, they're going to just do their same old thing, just come out, warm up, and go chasing females. In this case, there's both a male and a female, and the male's chasing the female on this log, but he's trying to chase her into the water because they only mate in water. So he's going to try to shove her into the water, and if she doesn't go, she just stays there. He has no option. He's just got to wait it out. Here's another situation where a male is eyeballing a female here, and he wants her to get into the water because, again, the female's going to have to be in the water. He's going to mount her from behind. If she's not in the water, there is no reproduction. He might be, sitting here for an hour or 2 hours, but, a turtle's life is made up of a lot of patience, so it shouldn't be that big of a problem. But if you're seeing turtles even stacked up on a log or a raft or on the bank, and they seem like they're piled up on top of each other, they're not mating. They have to do that in the water. The other thing that they're doing in the water, and I mentioned this earlier, is feeding. So they're sitting in the water. In this case, this is called surface basking. So turtles are going to be just sitting in the water right at the surface, kind of poking its head out, looking like it's sort of lunging its head. And it's eating invertebrates and vegetation. If you threw, a dead ground squirrel in the water, it would eat that. They will go for protein, animal protein first, but if they can't eat it, they'll just switch over to being a vegetarian. But they eat secondarily, they eat a lot of invertebrates, those kinds of things as well. So here's a turtle that is showing a lot of different things that I think is very fascinating. First, it's clearly going to eat this crayfish. That crayfish is history. Turtles will be predatory. So they'll chase down frogs, toads, obviously crayfish, birds. They're sneaky. They'll be like a little shark. We just did a red-legged frog workshop in the Sierras last weekend, and we got a bunch of red-legged frog tadpoles that had huge chunks taken out of their tail, all looking like a little shark bite. Or like if a little kid eats out of a peanut butter sandwich, that big sort of half moon. These are turtles going after live animals, chasing them down and grabbing them and eating them. The other kind of interesting thing I see here in this photo, besides the fact that it grabbed a crayfish, which I think is a big meal, is that the back of this turtle on the carapace is covered in algae. And I think that tells me a whole story here, and that is there is either not enough basking habitat, and the turtle is coming out of the water, but its back end is staying in the water, or there's a lot of competition for basking. And in this particular case, Brian Hubbs took the photo, and I know the site. There are a lot of turtles, and they're competing for the same habitat to bask, and so this turtle spends a lot of time with its butt end in the water, which is not good for it to have this kind of algae buildup. And because there's bacterial growth and lots of other things going on here, including salmonella, which is very common. But it's also going to need to bask in order to digest something like crayfish, especially some of the shells from the crayfish. But a turtle in this case will grab this crayfish, turn it upside down, eat all the soft stuff in it. It'll use its front legs, kind of ripping at it. And they're messy eaters, and other turtles will come in and start trying to steal from it too. Just like a couple of sharks. But we've seen them eat all of these species together. They eat on the upper left fish for sure, mosquito fish. We saw them eating three-spined stickleback, just sort of grabbing at the ones that swim by. In the lower left, tiger salamander. I saw a larval tiger salamander coming out of a pond, which is not normal and not something they're supposed to do. And I went and tried to pick it up, and there was a turtle hanging off the back end of it, sort of chomping away as it was moving up the body. Upper right, they eat a lot of carrion, and we'll take advantage of that. We'll bait some traps with chicken and some cat food. Stinkier and oilier, the better. It will attract turtles. My friend Jeff feeds his turtles once in a while because his pond is not productive enough for the number of turtles he has. And he'll throw, he controls pigs, so he'll throw a pig carcass in there, and they just swarm like piranhas. They want that protein. But again, they have to feed in the water. And then toads. I had a toad in Kellogg Creek that looked like it was bobbing in the creek, and I thought it was sort of funny, and it was making weird sounds, and so I went and grabbed the toad and couldn't pull it out of the water, and I reached down and found a turtle hanging on the back leg. So they are predatory. They'll eat live animals, dead animals, vegetation, invertebrates. Turtles will eat amphibian eggs. They'll eat leeches. They eat absolutely anything they can get, vegetarian or animal. So we're going to start now finally shifting into the reproductive mode. So here's a turtle. It's out at night. Sort of an odd thing for a turtle. You don't generally see turtles out at night. But I was walking around a site at night looking for red-legged frogs and saw this turtle. And one of the things I noted right away is if you look at the base of the turtle, or the lower end of the photo, the turtle's tail end of the carapace has mud on it. Now that means the turtle went into the upland, made a nest, and is now walking back to the pond. So you can learn stuff about the turtle, even if you didn't see what it did. There's some signs here that we're picking up that help us understand the behavior of the turtle. One thing is, it's out at night. That's not normal for an adult. The other is, it's got all this mud on the back of the carapace, so I know it had to have made a nest. So turtle behavior can be read from a turtle, even based on these kinds of small bits of information. Okay, so here's a turtle that was making a nest in, it's probably like 6 o'clock in the evening. So turtles tend to nest, not always, but tend to nest about 3 in the afternoon to about 9 o'clock at night. So there's a 6-hour window that they use pretty commonly. So here's this turtle. It walked up from the pond, found a little patch that it wanted to sit in, and it just kind of parked itself there. And what you don't see is that the back end of the turtle, so the front end of the turtle, the nose end is pointed upward. The back end of the turtle is where all the activity is occurring. The back legs are moving and digging, and she's urinating. So she'll urinate a little bit, dig a little, urinate a little, dig a little, and repeat that for hours. So she's digging into pretty hard soil, often clay soil. Doesn't have to be friable. It doesn't have to be sandy, silty, any of that. It just has to be free of large rocks and roots. So she's digging in there. This turtle, if I remember right, took about 4 hours to make her nest. There's a whole process that if you get to understand and see and watch turtles nesting, you'll know when she's digging, when she's laying, when she's covering it up, all that sort of thing. So she'll dig the hole. It's about maybe 3 to 4 inches deep. She's pushing the mud kind of behind her. That's why we see that little mud rim on her carapace when she's done. She'll drop the eggs into the hole. Then with her back legs, she'll go back to that mud pile she had dug up and piled while digging the nest. So she's got like a little berm behind her. She grabs the berm and starts pushing that into the hole, and she packs it down on top of the eggs. Takes out all the air pockets, smashes it into the eggs. Then she reaches back and starts grabbing grasses and smashes that into the mud. So it becomes like a little adobe. And then the final step is she reaches as far out as she can, grabs with her back legs, all the while not seeing anything that she's doing, but she'll grab the grass with her back legs and push grass over the top of the nest. So it's completely covered in grass, so you won't even see it. And then she'll stick her head up, look around, and if the coast is clear, she'll run to the pond and leave the nest behind. She never knows what happens. And if you wait a long time here, and a long time means they're going to be nesting, say, this weekend, the turtle's eggs are underground, and I'll repeat this again when I show you the timeline. So she nests in, say, June. Eggs are underground for 2 months, and they hatch in August. In this area, they hatch in August. The little turtles is a little baby turtle. It's alive. Stays underground in that nest until February or March of the next year. And then they pop out of the nest and then try to head to the pond. You can see in the background all the grass is green. That's spring. That's when the baby turtles come out, in the spring. If this hatched and emerged at the same year that it was laid, that would be August, and the grass behind my hand there would be brown. So this is coming out in late February. So the female laid the egg, then made the nest in June, stayed under, these little hatchlings stayed underground, and then once they pop out of the nest, they're not called hatchlings anymore. They're called post-emergent turtles because they were hatchlings in August. But now they're almost 5 months older, and they're called post-emergent turtles. When they hatch, they're about the size of a quarter or about an inch. This is my hand, so very, very tiny little animal. And I should say that super soft, food for everything. We saw Jay trying to eat one. You know, a jay, it seems crazy to be eating a little baby turtle, but they're going to try. Everybody's going to try. So a very, very vulnerable stage. Okay, so I'm going to go over the timing. So no more animal photos. This will just be charts to kind of give you an idea that the timing of turtles, not only in the uplands themselves, but also the nesting phenology, so that you get an idea of like, when would it be safe to do ground disturbance activity? When is it safe to be, you know, in the pond doing work, this sort of thing.
Hey, Jeff, a question?
Yeah.
So I'm just curious, in that area where you were observing the nest, and what's the estimate of how many of these turtles make it to the pond for as a percentage? You have an
Yeah.
estimate?
Yeah, some years zero. Some years, you know, it ranges on the site and the year and the vegetative cover. There's lots of little components to this. But it has only been measured a couple of times, and it ranges from about 0, which is the most common number, to about maybe 15% of the post-emergent turtles. So 15% of those that actually come out of the ground will make it to the water. Many of the rest either desiccate or they're predated. Some are predated in the nest. Some pop out of the nest and go in the wrong direction and just never make it anywhere. So pretty low number. The likelihood of making it to the water is low. And then once you're in the water, now a whole new host of predators can be present as well. But pretty low, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about the timing, just to kind of give you an idea, and I've shared a little bit this, shared a little bit of this along the way. So around early spring, and it depends on the year and where you are in kind of, you know, California or Baja or Washington. Around early spring, turtles become active. And, you know, there's sort of like, you know, a question mark before that, but in winter, when water, well, let's start with this. Since they evolved in rivers and creeks, water in winter is usually very dynamic, flowing. This is like when there's high flows and pulse flows and this sort of thing. So turtles typically would be out of the water in the upland, pushing under leaf litter or under a log edge or something, and they just wait there until water levels decrease. So given that that is where they start, in this time period, early spring, they become more active. They return to the water. If it's a pond, they might stay in the water all year long, but they might be deep in the mud all winter long when it's cold. But now it's spring and they're becoming more active. And this is the time when the males are chasing the females and trying to mate. Usually the mating occurs in, maybe around March. And it's not something that's easy to see. It's not that they're discreet about it. You just don't know what's happening. You see a turtle kind of bobbing in the water and you don't really get what's going on, but the female's underwater and the male's on top of her, holding onto her shell with his claws, and they're mating underwater. So that's this time of year. Turtles become active, mating occurs, and so on. So late spring and very early summer is when females lay the eggs. So what you're going to see is maybe mid-afternoon, 3 o'clock is our ideal time. Females start coming to the edge of the pool or creek or river. They're looking around for predators. They just walk up into the upland and start going wherever. And I do wherever sort of with quote fingers. Wherever means they have some idea where they're going to go, but sometimes they don't. And they'll walk up into the upland, they'll look around, not find a good spot, and then walk back to the pond and never make a nest or lay any eggs. Then the next day, they'll come back and try another spot. Typically, what we see is these little forays by the females can happen 2 or 3 trips up into the upland, and then they find the right spot, and that's where they're going to make their nest. But usually mid-May to about mid-July, females on a daily basis at some sites, you'll see some females leaving the pond and going into the upland in order to find a nest site and make a nest. So again, here they're just going to find some little spot. This is a turtle with a telemetry unit on it, that big red blob. The head is pointed to the left in this photo. And the female is going to go through that whole process that I talked about. So she's kind of settled herself into this grass, scratched out a little spot, dug the nest, and is working on finishing up her nest. If you come across a turtle that's nesting like this, she may just stop mid-process. Maybe some eggs are in the nest, maybe not. And she'll just run to the pond, and the eggs are history for that season. So when we find turtles nesting like this, we might walk by, take a quick photo, meaning like 2-3 seconds, and keep on walking. And then we sit in some little cover site and watch what happens. And that's what I did here. I saw the telemetry unit. I had my camera ready as I was walking. Just walked by, reached down, click, and kept on walking. So here she is making her nest. And then when she left, so the turtle left, then I catch her. We'll talk about this in the field too. This is what is left behind. So I went back to the site, found a little spot, moved the grass. So that pile of grass on the left of the kind of the turtle shape here is grass I've pushed away from what she packed onto it. It all looked like just grass. And so you can see the kind of a little damp spot there. That's where she's packed the nest cover on. We call that a nest plug. She's smashed that down and flattened it. She actually does little push-ups on it to smash it down with her plastron, and then covers it with grass, but I've moved the grass. So that's the only sign you'll see of a turtle nest. And typically you don't see that because she's covered that with grass as well. So that's the turtle nest. That would be all you see. And that's what the skunk detects. So she's peed there so many times, and all that made all this adobe that the skunk comes by, and if it's still fresh, it smells that and digs it right up. If it's not fresh, 3 or 4 days go by and it's not detected, it's safe. All that smell dissipates. So if you pull the plug off, so there's a plug in there, and maybe we'll see some in the field. This is what you see. You see some eggs just packed down in the hole. Now, we didn't pull the plug off in this case. This is a photo of a turtle that got disturbed while it was nesting. It was disturbed by a red fox and just ran. And so we went up to the nest, and this is what was exposed. So this time of year, the eggs are in the nest. So now we're looking at June through August. In this particular case, just to finish the story, we made our own plug, smashed it in there, covered it with grass, put a little cage over it so the fox wouldn't get it. And these turtles did hatch, but that's not the story I'm trying to show here. What I'm trying to show is eggs are underground June through August. They're developing underground, and in August is when the hatching occurs. All underground, and they just stay underground. So if you dug a nest up, this is what you would see in August. Little tiny turtles in the nest, kind of moving around, not doing very much. They're not even moving very much. They're not feeding. So they had a yolk. They were connected to the yolk sac in the nest. If you pulled this little tiny turtle out and flipped it over, you'd see what effectively looks like a little belly button. That is all the feeding they're doing for months. So August, September, October, November, December, January, February, no feeding. But they're not moving much either. They're just sitting in there. But when they're in there, they're kind of moving, sort of shifting, stepping on each other. They're grinding the eggs to nothing. So if you found a nest where turtles hatched and then emerged, you would never see eggs. No fragments are left. They've been stepped on so many times, they're just gone. Occasionally you might find a dud egg. There is a dud egg in this nest. But 4, 5, 6 turtles in this little hole in the ground, they pop up and they try to make it to the first rock or log or patch of grass or hole in the ground as soon as they get out of the nest. So now if we fast forward, so now they've hatched underground, they stay underground, they made it through all of winter, and now we're back up to March and April, usually late February through April, through very early April, turtles will emerge. So here's on the right side, a little turtle just came out of the nest. It's marching its way down to the water. It's going to take a long time to get to water, typically 4 or 5 days to a couple of weeks to get to water, even if it's close to water, because they're going to go 1 or 2 feet, get under a cow patty or a rock or a stick or some grass and just sit there for a little while and rest and then do it again and again. On the left side, I show this photo because this looks like a hatched out nest. So there's a little hole in the ground, some egg fragments nearby, but this is not a hatched out nest. This is a predated nest. And hopefully we'll see some of those in the field. And I know this even just from the photo because a hatched out nest, so a nest where the turtles have hatched in August, stayed underground until February, and then are emerging, would have green grass because it's spring. And they come out of the turtle nest and then try to make it to the pond. This has brown grass, so that was in the summer. That means a skunk got it before they all hatched out. But I'll get sent photos like this on the left and say, oh, I think I found a turtle nest and they all hatched out. I see the eggs. I say, oh, those are egg fragments from a skunk eating all the eggs. So that's a predated nest, not a hatched out nest. But again, the turtles are moving to the aquatic site in very early spring, very late winter. And if you found one walking to the water, here's what you see. So a quarter is 1 inch. So the turtle's about 1 inch or so, not very big, very, very soft, very vulnerable. And on the right side, you see that little spot where I was saying looks like a little, kind of like a little belly button where it was connected inside the egg. At this stage, if you try to look at the inguinal scute, it's so tiny, certainly for my old eyes, it's not really something you use. You just say, that's a pond turtle. Northwestern or southwestern, doesn't matter. But they're very, very hard to find at this stage. They're very small. If you're just walking through habitat, especially if there's any grass at all, they could be in the grass and you couldn't even see them. So we never do hatchling surveys. That's just useless. They do stink really badly. They smell like a carcass, like a roadkill. So this would probably be the only time I would ever recommend using like a scent detection dog. I think they could find hatchlings very easily. But what do you do with that? I mean, unless you have a permit to move them, you can't move them. You would only know that they emerged from the nest. So that's about all the information you get. So there's not a lot of value in all of that. In general, we just try to leave them alone at this stage because they're so vulnerable. So here's the site we're going to go to. This is a portion of it when we did a big restoration project for turtles out there. So the vegetation is very immature here. When you see it, it'll be very, very mature. But what I'm showing you is there's a turtle nest on the very far right edge of this slide. That's the red dot. And the number 1 is suggesting, and I'm just going to kind of map this out imaginary, like I'm pretending that this really happened, but this is sort of what would happen. So the nest is the red dot. Turtle emerges. So it comes out, let's just say this is February, late February. It goes maybe a meter in some random direction, finds a pile of grass because they mowed out there, and it just gets under there and stays there for a day or so. And then the next day or 2 days later, it makes another movement and it finds a little thistle that's growing and it parks under the thistle for a day or so, hoping not to get eaten. Then it does that every day for several days or many days or many, many days. And it's just trying to get to water, but it doesn't make a direct route. It won't go from number one all the way to the water in one day, even though it probably could. But it's evolutionarily, it's programmed to hide and to find cover. So this is a very vulnerable time. You wouldn't want to be driving out there. This is, again, late February, early March. You really don't even want to be hiking around out there. Surveying or anything is probably you're gonna step on baby turtles and not even know it. At the number 8 spot, it makes it to the water, and as long as there's not a lot of emergent vegetation, and that's what this whole restoration project was about. We removed all the vegetation. If there's no emergent vegetation, nothing stopping it, they'll just go right into the water and they'll stay really close to the bank. If it's Elaeocharis or something like that, no problem. But if it's super dense bulrush or cattail, it won't get in and it'll just desiccate or be predated. But this is probably the most vulnerable time for them. Very treacherous. Birds sit up on the wire on the fence just watching for these kinds of movements. The skunks are out, the foxes, coyotes, otters, everybody's out waiting to get a free meal. And remember, these things smell like a carcass because they've been underground with, essentially protein fragments for 5 months, and they stink horrendously. So if you're a mammal, you're going to smell it. And that's another reason why many of them don't make it. But occasionally you have a biologist that's watching these nests, and we see there are signs that they're going to emerge, and I think I have some slides of that. But the first sign you see is a hole in the ground where the nest is. It's probably the size of a pencil, maybe a centimeter or less. We call this a breathing hole, but it has nothing to do with breathing, but that's just the name for it. But what has happened is the turtles are in the nest, and as they get more active as the season progresses, they start essentially wearing the nest down at the roof. And they wear it down so much that they eventually break through the top of it. They have to go through about 1.5 inches of mud to wear that down. And you can see the wear line on the top of the shell on each of these, where they've just been pushing up at the top of the nest enough to wear it down so that they eventually make a little hole. It gets really thin, and they start popping themselves out. Once there's a little hole, they'll stick a head out and a little foot and then pop out. Not all at once. This is not like sea turtles that run out with 500 sea turtles run out in one morning. This is one pops out, maybe the next day one pops out, a couple of days later one pops out. So keep in mind that again, this is a very vulnerable time. If you're interested in trying to find nestlings and you know where a nest is, which is a whole nother story, but let's just say you know where a nest is and you want to find these little post-emergent turtles, you can put out cover boards. They'll go right under the cover board. They need the cover. So that's the only thing you need to think about is, if you're going to do something that involves these little post-emergent turtles, maybe try putting out cover boards and see how far they're making it and how fast they're going to do it. You can mark them just with a little Sharpie, a little silver or copper Sharpie. Just put a number right on their shell and then you know the individual. So I'll jump into nest surveys, but if you have any questions, it'd be a great time to ask.
Hi, Jeff. This is Tashaka. I'm
Yeah.
traveling, so I hope you can hear me.
I can hear
During
you.
your telemetry, during your studies, have you ever come across observation where you will see a bunch of the nests kind of clustered in one central location or kind of clustered together? Or are you finding them more spread out? And what is that? What would be that distance?
Yeah, that's a super good question. So yes, we do find clusters of nests. That's much more about the microhabitat where they want to find a good spot that's exposed to the sun, that doesn't have a lot of roots, doesn't have a lot of rocks. So once they find a spot like that, you can find 5 or 6 or 7 nests in the same location, like within 5 or 10 square meters. And they'll use it year after year. They'll go back to that site unless it changes. But you might find 20 of those kinds of sites on a given project site. So, 5 or 6 turtles use this spot, 5 or 6 use a different spot, 10 use another spot. At the site we're going to go to, we had 120 turtles made up of about 80 females. And so we had lots of spots where there's lots of turtle nesting activity. And we couldn't, no, none of us could walk out there and say, this is where they would nest. Even if they nested there last year, we just say, well, this is one of the areas they can nest, and we'll watch for that. But it's really tricky to try to predict where they go. But we definitely know that there are locations where you can go there every year and find either predated nests or intact nests. And those things we try to protect with little fence to keep predators out and to keep disturbance to a minimum. But finding them is very, very hard.
Right. Thank you. Yeah, the reason I'm asking for restoration work and pond restoration projects, that would be a great asset to try to create that microhabitat area that would be conducive for the nesting sites.
Yes, and I think there is a way to do that, and there are habitat characteristics that they're going to want. So they want a sunny spot that has some vegetative cover, so usually bunch grasses. They don't want any overstory at all, so no trees or shrubs, but small scale, tufted grasses, that sort of thing, small forbs. They like that, but they want exposure to bare ground, and they need a clear path to get there. So you can't put up some sort of, structure or vegetation that's going to block them from getting to that spot.
Great. Thanks.
Okay, so what was nesting surveys? What did and did not work? So we did a 12-year study on pond turtle nesting at this site that we're going to go to. We initially used VHF telemetry units, which are the type you use when you have a Yagi antenna, and we glue those on. They're the size of a baby turtle, and you can glue it onto most of these turtles because they're pretty small. But that gave us maybe 10 to 15 observation points in a season, mostly because sometimes they're underwater and you don't get a point. Sometimes they're, in some area you have a general idea where they are, but you couldn't really get there. So we switched to this other type of telemetry unit, which is GPS, made by Telemetry Solutions in Concord. The units are quite a bit bigger, about big as my thumb, so about the size of about 5 little baby pond turtles. So we had to use it on big turtles. This is a female. We telemetered mostly females because we were trying to figure out where their nests were using this kind of technology. The VHF style, so the older style, costs about $220 a piece. This one costs $3,600. So it can be cost prohibitive if you don't have a big grant. We were lucky we had some grant funding. So we got a bunch of females with these units. These units will collect 750 data points, 1 per hour, between 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock at night for 3 months. So everything we needed, it would collect all that data in the nesting season that went from mid-May to mid-July, every hour between those 2 hours, 3 and 9, and then send it to my phone at home, which was fantastic. So we were just, high-fiving each other, thinking we were going to find every nest. It was going to be glorious. We'd write papers. We'd, throw confetti at each other, pat each other on the back, and all the works. So here's one turtle. We had different colored turtles. So this is the white turtle, and this is the kind of thing it did. So we had for the white turtle, we had 708 points, and it spent a lot of time in 2 different areas. We know what it's doing. There's basking in those 2 areas. So it's giving us points that are pretty precise, within about 9 square feet. So 1 square meter. So we're pretty comfortable with, it's going to give us a little dot on a map, and we can walk right out there. So we could look on our computer and say, oh, the turtle's heading out into the upland. Let's drive out there and see where it is. And so from that, we got these little spots in the upland. That's the important part, because we want to find out where they're nesting. So these little upland spots we circled in red, and we found 6 of them that we knew were like, oh, that's that's a spot where they can make a nest. They were in the uplands in some vegetation. They're not going to make a nest there, so we disregarded those. So these spots, we went out there and we're looking around. We couldn't find the turtle, because there's a little bit of a delay. There's about a 30-minute delay, but we had, a turtle's going to make a nest and it's going to take them 5 hours. So even if with a 30-minute delay, we're going to still see a turtle. But if you look at all these are single points. So the turtle was there, and it's collecting points during each hour. So the turtle was there for an hour or less, 2 minutes for all we know. And that should have told us what was going on. So the turtle is actually just doing nesting site forays. It's just walking around looking for a good place to nest. And did it nest there or not? Well, we found out later we couldn't tell. So even with these telemetry units, we were going out to these sites, going to the specific site, then we're on our hands and knees looking around in the grass. Can we find a wet spot? No, we never found a single nest. We had a dozen turtles with these telemetry units on it. So many, many tens of thousands of dollars worth of equipment. All of this seemed like it was going to do it, and we found 0 nests this way. It was really very frustrating. We got some good information. We learned a lot about turtle behavior, but we didn't learn anything about nesting. So instead, we went out there and did visual encounter surveys. So we just gathered up people. We would take them out, start them off around 2 p.m., have them just walking up and down the levees, walking around the upland. And the idea was, if you look down a long levee and there's a path on it, you'll see a turtle cross a path. And from there, we'll stay back a couple 100 meters with a scope, and we're going to be watching for the turtle. We're going to watch where it stops, see where it nests, and then as soon as the turtle leaves the nest, we're going to race over there and find exactly where the nest site is. So a lot of this time was spent with lots of people. We used the same people over many, many years, which was super helpful, but many hundreds of hours of person time. So we start May 15, we end July 7th at this site. They were there 7 days a week, 3 to 9 p.m., and we did these surveys to look for turtles. And this is the kind of thing we would see. We'd see a female come out of the water, looking around. She would see us watching her, even though we were in cover. I should point out, we all wore either tan or green or blue because they're sensitive to red, orange, and yellow. And we're trying not to move much because movement matters to a turtle. And if she didn't think we were there, she would just walk up into the upland and try making a nest. So here's a turtle. It's not easy to see. I think I highlighted it. Yeah, there it is. So we're watching from a couple 100 meters away. The turtle's moving along. We just keep staring and we see where she stops. Mostly you just see grass moving around, but we have a pretty good idea. So we're watching the turtle, and we race up there after she's done, and we find out, oh, she did what we call a nest start. So she peed, she dug a little while, hit a stone, sat there, was probably frustrated, peed a little more, tried to dig, kept hitting stones, and just left. And we would see this over and over, and that's what the white turtle was doing. It was going up into the upland, trying to do this stuff. It would make nest starts and get nowhere. So quite frustrating, left us with lots of excitement to start and then a big letdown because we would just find what looks like a little divot in the ground and they would just leave. So the turtle in this particular case was pointed in the arrow direction. So we know that because you can see an impression of the turtle's shape on this ground and see where the digging strokes are. And you learn this with time. But it gives you an idea of where the turtle was sitting and what they want behind them. So Tashaka asked the question about like microhabitat. They seem to want something behind them. A tuft of grass, a little bit of a thistle, or it could be mallow or something like that. There's something behind them, and they use that for a little bit of a cover spot. So we often look for those little tufts of grass or a little patch of grass or a weed patch, and we know the turtle is going to back into that and look into the open space for predators because predation risk is very high at this time. So here's another nest start. This one was a lot deeper. That's my finger. So I'm pushing in maybe 2 inches or 3 inches. And this is the hole the turtle would make. So you get an impression of the size of the hole. You see the mud that she's generated because she's peeing and digging and peeing and digging. And she's reaching down into that hole, digging it out. But when I felt down in there, there was a little bit of a root that went by. You can see in the upper portion of the picture, there's a bit of a thistle there. And it just pushed a big root right through that section. And she hit the root. Couldn't go any further, gave up, and that was it for the day. She just came back the next day to make a nest. So we often find nest starts. These things can be frustrating, but they also give you an indication that there is reproduction in the site. So here's another one. This is another angle without my finger. This is helpful because I know a lot of information just by looking at this. There's that thistle leaf hanging into the photo again. So she's backed up to some little piece of vegetation. She's pointed down to the left slightly, and I know that because you see all this mud that she's pushed backward with her back legs. I also see the shape of the hole. If you understand the anatomy and the way the turtle is digging, the shape of a turtle is kind of wide, but she's digging a very, very specific narrow hole. So her legs are going inward toward the center of her body and digging, and she makes these funny little lobes on the left and right lower side of this hole. So you can see exactly the direction she was pointing. You reach in there and I found the root and I thought, oh, that's what she found. And she just dashed away. It's nice to find these because we know they're definitely going to lay eggs the next day. And then we're a lot more alert to finding a turtle nesting the following day. So again, the arrow is pointed in the direction she was facing. So here's that same red female nesting again. And we're going to go through this as sort of a, step A, step B, step C. And I just drew a little head in there so you can see the direction she was heading. So I've now pulled the turtle off her nest. So here's the turtle on the nest. Here's the turtle off the nest. And the nest is in front of her. And I showed you when I pulled the grass away where the nest was. But if I took the turtle out of the photo, all you would see is grass. So the point of showing you this is to say, we find a turtle nesting in the upland and we're back about 200 meters because we don't want to spook her. We're using binoculars or a scope and we're watching her and she starts to walk away. We don't focus on the turtle. We don't care. We dash over to find the nest, and that's not always easy because we think we see the spot, but what we really see is probably 2-3 square meters. And you're on your hands and knees pushing through the grass, trying to find that little damp spot that she's covered up and packed grass on top of. And it's very hard to find. Sometimes we don't find it. And we'll come back the next day and the skunk will have found it for sure. But because we do these things frequently enough, we've learned it's a team of two. So one person dashes over to try to find the nest. The other person chases down the turtle and grabs it, looks for the markings so we know, with that turtle 63 or 191 or whatever it was. And we also palpate the turtle. So if we catch female turtles, we'll palpate them, which means you put your fingers into the leg joints and feel if there are eggs. So we're palpating to see if she made a phantom nest. So here's yet another problem, and I'll send out a paper about this stuff today for everybody. It's very brief, so you can read it. It's not long. The turtle is going to dig a hole, act like she lays eggs, put the whole plug back in, do the whole thing with the grass, mash it all down, mask it and cover it, and then run off like she made a nest. And in fact, she laid no eggs. So that's why we chase the turtle down. We palpate her to see if she still has eggs. If she still has eggs, she's going to lay the next day. If she doesn't have eggs, then the eggs are in the ground and we protect the nest. This stuff gets very detailed and complicated the more you work with turtles. They are very, very tricky at hiding this stuff. So this is where the nest is. So I draw the circle to show you. I set it up this way because I tried to get you to think the nest is right in front of her. So in the direction of the red tag. And it's not. It's right here on the side of her. That's how hard they are to find. There's no sign of it. You really have to be pushing grass around looking for a little damp spot. And here's what I did. I pushed that grass around and there's the damp spot. But this is not easy to find even on your hands and knees. So let's just fast forward 2 days and it hasn't been predated. Now it's just dry. and you're walking along and the grass is covering this thing. And you're walking along trying to find turtle nests because in your document you've said, oh, we're, 2 weeks before ground disturbance, we're going to survey the area for turtle nests. I don't know what you're doing out there. You're not finding turtle nests, that's for sure. Because all you're going to find is dry dirt and grass, and you're going to walk right over the top of this, or even drive over it and not even know it's there. It can tolerate you walking on it, driving over it, all that stuff, but you're never going to see it. I wouldn't see it. And I'll tell you guys this in the field, until last weekend, just turtle nests in the upland, just on their own, without a female associated with it, I found 2 in my whole career. 2. Now, if I count all the ones where I found the female and I followed her and waited and watched, I've seen hundreds of turtle nests. But that's all about the female, not about the nest. If somebody said, "Oh, can you go out and do a turtle nest survey?" I'd say, "No, thanks. There's no chance of finding them. Or if there is, it's all luck." So I'd found 2 up until this last weekend. This weekend I found 4 in one little spot, and it was mostly because the vegetation was super sparse, and I knew that they had been nesting there since 2017. So I went right to that spot to see if I could find any. I found 4. So I doubled the number. Well, I found 4 when I had previously found 2. So I'm now up to 6 in my entire career. And I told you earlier, I've been doing turtle work for 30 years. So please save yourself the embarrassment. Do not write that you're going to do turtle nest surveys. It really means nothing except that you know nothing about turtles. Turtle nest surveys are futile. The service is going to expect you to protect everything within 500 meters or assume you're destroying all the nests. And we're working on a paper right now that should be out soon that's going to tell you with a little mathematical formula, very easy one, don't worry about it, that if you calculate in your acreage that you're going to disturb and the number of female turtles you think you have, this is how many eggs you're going to kill and how many nestlings you're going to kill. And from that you can mitigate, even though there's no way to mitigate for loss of individuals. But the general point is you're not going to find turtle nests. I'll say this over the weekend as well. You're just not going to. If you do, it's all luck. We found 1 last year just by luck, and that was my second one. Now this year, since I found 4, I feel like a pro, finally. So the turtle, again in this shot, is pointed in the direction of the arrow. Fresh nest. This is 2-3 minutes old. That's it. In 2 days, if the skunk hasn't found it, you'll never find it. So again, here's I showed this photo earlier. The female's racing away from the nest. She's going to get back to the water. If she did not lay her eggs, maybe she made a phantom nest or she hit a root or a rock, and she's going to go back to the pond. You wouldn't know that just from this photo. You wouldn't know if she laid eggs or didn't lay eggs. You'd have to palpate her, and I can show you on turtles if we catch any turtles over the weekend. She's going to make it to the pond. She's going to drink like a camel because all that urinating is lost. I mean, she just peed until she's empty. But she's going to go back to the pond. She's not going to feed. She's just going to drink, and then she'll come back the next day and try to lay her eggs. If she's in a highly disturbed habitat, so let's just say you're in a creek and you're replacing a bridge and there's turtles present and she wants to come out and nest and she keeps seeing people present, she'll just drop her eggs right in the water and they'll drown and be done. So keep in mind that you can promote that too, promote loss of the eggs just by not giving them a chance to get out. If you catch them and put them in a bucket, they'll just drop their eggs in the bucket from stress. So be aware of all this stuff. So that mud thing does tell me she made a nest. All it tells me is she constructed a nest. It doesn't tell me she laid the eggs. That's why I would palpate her. So when we find a nest, here's what we do. A couple of friends of mine were helping us. We had lots of volunteers on these projects, mostly to teach them. We put out these little cages that look like a hat, really. So it has a big apron, and it has a little section that's raised up. And the raised up section has a screen mesh that's big enough for little baby turtles to leave. And it's nailed down all around it. If you don't nail down all around it, the skunks will just dig under. If you make your apron too small, the skunks will dig under. if you don't use lots of nails, and these nails are 10 inches long, they'll just pull it up and dig out the nest, and you'll lose the nest the very next day. So lots and lots of these big spikes. We buy these at Home Depot. You can get them wherever you want. Home Depot doesn't appreciate me saying their name, or they don't even know. So we use these spikes. We make these little exclusion hats and put it right on top of the nest. And then we watch this from June all the way till February. We have to come out in the early spring and take the whole thing off, trim all the grass away, and put the thing right back down, because we need to see the hole in the ground for the turtles to be getting out of in order to know if they are leaving. Then we put cover boards all around. So this is a huge chore to do, especially if you have a big site. You might, if you're following females, you might get 100 nests, and you'll have 100 of these out there. And I know your document would have said, if we find a nest, we'll protect, the area around it with a fence. You might protect every bit of your project site for all you know. You don't know what's coming until you see it. Very labor intensive. So here it is in the spring. And this is what I mean about vegetation. It starts growing through. You have to pull all this stuff up, trim all that vegetation off, get it back down on the ground. And then we have these rocks. You see the rocks in the foreground. Those are little cover spots for turtles. Maybe we miss them emerging and they need something to hide under, because they're going to race off of this little the screen apron, and they're going to immediately need some cover. Now they'll use the grass, but that doesn't help us because we might step on them. So we put the rocks out there and cover boards so that they have some place to go and we don't step on them. So this is looking down. Let me just go back a slide. So I'm looking straight into the center of this little raised up box in the next slide. So right dead in the center, you see a little hole that's the size of a pencil. That's exactly where the nest is. We've trimmed the grass out. We can see in it. The nest is being worn down. The nest plug is being worn down by the turtles inside. And we call that a breathing hole, but it has nothing to do with breathing. They're breathing tiny, tiny amounts of air underground. This is where it's worn itself through. Like, if you wear the knees on your pants, eventually you start with a small hole and it gets bigger. That's exactly the process here. So the turtles are wearing that down, and eventually they make a big enough hole that they can push themselves out of. And here's a turtle trying to push itself out. So it's made a big enough hole. It will stay there for a day, just kind of pushing. It's not in a rush like a sea turtle. This is a very, very slow process. And you might come back and see the turtle there the next day. It hasn't moved. And then a day later you come back and the turtle's gone. You have to look for it under cover nearby. And again, if you dig these up, sometimes they just sort of persist underground because maybe things have changed and they can't get through the grasses that have grown over the top, and we dig them out. We wouldn't dig out a turtle nest until the end of March. That's when they should all be out of the nest by the end of March. And so we just dug this one up and got all these little babies out and moved them to the water. So here they are just right before they're going to go into the water. Again, only an inch, very soft, super cute. Really just, hard not to love. We put them in the water, and now they're going to immediately start feeding on ostracods and copepods and, little fly larvae and whatever they can find. But they're going to stay really close to the bank. If they're further than a meter away from the bank, I'd be surprised. Anything further, from the bank and the predators just increase. So there are two turtles in this spot, the one right in the center, and there's one right behind it. They're just moving around among cover, and they're going to pop up on, one piece of cattail and bask, and then just plop in if they see anybody coming by. Person, predator, whatever. They just plop right into the water, and they'll just swim down to the bottom. So if you're walking around in waders in this kind of habitat this time of year, like April, you're probably going to entomb some little baby turtles right into the mud. You just squish them right down in. They can hold their breath at this stage for 5-10 minutes. They just pop their head up, get another gulp, and go right back down. So I'm going to add a little more to the story about turtles in the uplands, but do you have any questions about nests, nest surveys, nestlings, any of that stuff? Certainly no problem if you do not. We'll talk about this more in the field, but and I'll really kind of smash this point home. Turtle nest surveys are useless. Even if you bring in turtle nest dogs, detection dogs, and let me just say why, and that is that if you remember, the female will pee and do little spots here and there, checking for a good spot to dig, but as she's walking, she's dropping pee. She's just going to pee everywhere. And if you have a location where turtles are leaving the pool to go into the upland, there's going to be hundreds and hundreds of pee spots. And the dogs will detect that and sit. And we have a slide, I should put it in this presentation, has about 250 flags. We ran out of flags. And it's just covering like 40 square meters, flags absolutely everywhere, because the turtles just peed everywhere. And the dogs are good at finding those, but those aren't all nests. Maybe 5% are nests, and you don't even know which 5%. So the detection dogs are good. They just can't differentiate between a pea spot and a nest. So it's not even helpful to use them. You just say, oh, I have turtles present. They've nested here. And we'll talk about the schedule of timing to avoid nests and how you can really reduce the likelihood of impacting turtles.
Jeff, I had a question.
Yeah.
So once the plug dries and the urine scent goes away, and then up until they dig themselves out, is there any predation on the nests in between that time frame? Because that cage is there. I'm just kind of wondering, like, are you protecting it for the full season, or is it really just in the beginning and really when they emerge, or are there predators that will actually dig them up in the, over the winter?
Yeah, for the most part, it's really the first couple of days. The problem comes from us, really, because we hover over it. We're dropping our scent all over these spots, and then the predators start focusing, and they don't know exactly where the nest is, but they'll just, if you pulled your cage off, they'll just dig everywhere around there, and they'll eventually find it. They don't have a problem doing that. So we leave the cage right up until February, and then we'll leave it until we think that turtles have emerged. And if they don't emerge by the end of March, then we'll pull the cage up and dig it out. We dig it out because there are underground predators too, namely the unexpected predator, gophers. So gophers will be digging through. You'll never even know they're underground. They hit a nest. They eat everybody. And you think, what the hell is a rodent doing eating all this animal protein? Well, just think about the ground squirrel you run over on the road, and then its brethren comes out and starts eating it. All these animals want protein. Gophers will find them, not hunt them down, but find them, intersect the nest. You'll never know it was predated until you dig it up. So in the paper I'll send, it talks a lot about the types of nests. It's going to have I forget what we even call it. It's just essentially an unknown predated nest. So it's challenging because you'll have protected that thing for 8 or 9 months, and then it doesn't hatch out and you're wondering what's up, and you dig it out and you find egg fragments because the gopher will leave the egg fragments and there are no baby turtles to mash it into the dirt, turn it into compost. So yeah, gophers are a predator. You got to be aware of them too. It's hard to kind of keep them out, so we just document it when it happens, and it's just part of the process. But very, very tricky. All this stuff becomes very, very tricky. I know some of you, hope to just learn how to find nests. That's why you joined this workshop. And you're hearing me be, sort of pessimistic about it all. It's really not pessimism. It's really factual. You're really not going to find nests. So 29 years of doing turtle nest surveys, and I found 2 up until the weekend, 4 now. Yeah, you can find them when you find the females, but even that's tricky because remember, they'll do nest starts, phantom nests, all this sort of thing. And like I said, that paper is very brief, but I'll send it to you and you guys should read that one.
Hey, Jeff, I had a question.
Yeah.
When they're making the phantom nest and returning to the water, are they going in the same area the next day to lay? Is it going to be the same nest or is it completely different?
That's a really good question. Often it's very different. So they'll have a single female can do two clutches a year, and she'll lay both clutches in different areas. But if she goes to a site and she makes a phantom nest or she's disturbed, she'll go to a completely different site. And so we being humans are sort of creatures of habit. We'll spook a female. We know her number because we saw her number, and we'll think, okay, we're coming right back tomorrow, and we're going to just watch that spot. And she'll be on the opposite side of the marsh making a nest. So this is a game of survival. She feels threatened, so she's not going right back to that same spot, even if that's her favorite nesting spot. Favorite being she uses it every year for 20, 30 years. Yeah, it gets harder with every question.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so turtles in the uplands. Turtles in the uplands means adult turtles in the uplands and nests in the uplands and nestlings in the uplands and post-emergent turtles in the uplands. Okay, so to figure out what's going on with turtles in the uplands, I know this is about nesting, and it's going to be focused on nesting, especially in the field. But I'm going to talk to you about turtles being in the uplands because I'm going to give you some windows where you can do your ground disturbing, and that's going to include no nests in the uplands, no post-emergent turtles in the uplands, no adults in the uplands. So that's the piece I'll talk about, all turtles in the uplands of one form or another. So turtles are found in the uplands. Here's two turtles I just found just like the way they are. They're just sitting in some leaf litter, some pine leaf litter in the Sierras, just sitting there. And you think to yourself, what's the turtle just doing sitting there? Well, in this case, it was spring, and they're programmed to get out of the water because water that they've evolved in has these pulse flows and flash flows and rain event floods and these sorts of things. And so they just get out of the uplands. And if they just find some safe place to park, they're fine. And that's what they did. So they were just in sort of a torpor in effect. They're just kind of lazy, sleeping, just waiting it out. But there are different reasons why turtles get into the uplands. In this case, in winter, especially turtles that use creeks and rivers, they'll just get out of the water. Usually they'll push under leaf litter or duff or a branch or a log or something. They don't go into burrows, but they'll find some place, often under cover, so under canopy, in something dense, brushland that's dense. They're not trying to be in a sunny spot. They're really just trying to be in a thermally stable spot. So here's something I wanted to kind of share with you. So turtles in the uplands, and this is just the adults. We're going to include a few nestlings for the data I provided, but these 6, ignore my name on the bottom, but these 6 authors, the first 6 of them, looked at turtles in the uplands. How many months or days are turtles in the uplands? So Reese in 1996 reported maximum number of days an adult turtle can be in the uplands is 122. Holt found 115, Rathbun 191, Bondi shot it way up to 310. Pilioid, who has a really good paper, is certainly worth reading. 217, that's 7 months in the uplands. And then Zaragoza just broke it all by finding turtles sitting in the uplands 333 days, so 11 months. Now we found a little more than 11 months, but there's a reason for that, and I'll talk about it. The point of this is to say turtles, again, are not eating if they're in the uplands. So Zaragoza's work, where they found turtles effectively 11 months of the year in the uplands, they're not eating for 11 months. Zaragoza's turtles were in a pond. So the pond dried in the summer, the turtles left, and the pond filled back up. The turtles have no idea the pond filled back up. They're just in the uplands, waiting. So the pond fills back up, months and months and months go by. They're moving around a little in the uplands, but it took them almost a year to make it back to the pond where they could feed for a while and then go right back into the uplands. They don't know that the pond is wet or dry. So in Pilioid's case, Pilioid's the 5th one down, they had turtles in the uplands for 7 months, their ponds never dried, but their turtle's brain is set for pond habitat to dry or creek habitat to dry or to be flashy, and they just get out of it and go into the uplands anyway. So the point of all of this is to say, look, the average time in the uplands for the turtles that we examined was 7 months. So the adults can be in the uplands 7 months, not eating, not reproducing, not doing anything. They're just sitting in the uplands, just waiting for better habitat to emerge. And they don't even know what better is, because they're in the uplands. They have no idea what's happening in the creek or river or the pond. But it is to show you that if you're doing ground disturbing activity, you should be present. Every time they're doing ground disturbing activity, biologists should be present if you're associated with any aquatic habitat within 500 meters of it, because there might be adult turtles in the uplands. It's just really kind of a cautionary tale. They're going to get buried under or run over or whatever it is if you're not present and monitoring. So every monitoring project which is associated with water within 500 meters should have full-time monitoring and be walking around with the ground disturbing activity, especially in cover, so brush and tree cover, because there might be turtles in the uplands. And this doesn't even count for the reproductive period, but that's mixed in here too. So turtles are walking around either reproducing, which we talked about quite a bit here. So reproductive period is May through July, or they're in the uplands estivating, that's summer, a summer period, or they're brumating, that's the winter period when they get out to avoid flashy flows or super cold, ice covered areas. And then you have to sort of mix all this on the calendar, and that can be tricky. I should just step back a little to say some ponds in their habitat do freeze over, and we know turtles can still be under the ice in ponds in some sites. There's a paper Jeff Wilcox did that shows that. But most of them are going to leave, especially in very, very cold habitats, and go into the uplands. And here's a turtle that's going to push its way into some cover, and it's going to be in poison oak for 3, 4, 5 months. And if that gets burned, does the turtle get burned? Probably. We don't know much about fire ecology in turtles. If it doesn't burn, the turtle's fine, comes right back to water. The young are in the uplands, and I've said this a lot, from the time they're an egg, obviously, so May, and all the way until, let's say March is the tail end of that. But then there are a couple of weeks of making it from the nest to the aquatic site too. So that takes you into April a bit. So May, until April, yikes, what's going on here? We'll talk about that. So let's say we're going to kind of give you an imaginary situation here. You got some turtle nests here at this site. This is the site we'll visit. It's much more mature than it looks like here now. And these arrows are pointing to nests we know about. So those nests are going to be laid in May through July. So, go back here. So these nests are in the ground this time of year that we're talking, that we're doing this workshop. Right now, these nests are in the ground. So here's that time period in orange. So May to mid-July is the nesting. So the females are up in the upland. She's building nests. The nests are in the upland as well. So everything from about mid-May through mid-July, you have nests, eggs, and females in the upland. So the nests are going to be incubating underground, so that's the green, and then they're going to hatch around August. Most of these are hatching in August, mostly in Northern California. In Southern California and Baja, they might be hatching and actually emerging in August. We don't know enough about those areas, but we're going to have to be looking into that. So I put the little red box saying subterranean hatching and remaining. So they're remaining underground. Now keep in mind that this darker blue is the subterranean occupation of a nest. So all these nestlings now are in the nest September, October, November, December, January, February. So now we have occupied upland from mid-May all the way to February. And now we have that nest emergence period where they've emerged from the nest and they're hiding under a rock or a patch of vegetation or coverboard or whatever until around early April. And early April includes maybe the first week or so of April, maybe 2 weeks in some areas, that you're going to have post-emergent turtles still moving from the nest to the water. So now here's when there are no neonates, so no post-emergent turtles, no little hatchlings, no nests, nothing like that are in the water. In the upland, from mid-April to mid-May. So there's your window. April 15, so tax day, to May 15, you're probably not going to hit any little baby turtles in the upland. So it gives you roughly 30 days. Do all your ground disturbing without hitting a baby turtle in the upland. Now you still might hit one or two, but likelihood is very, very low. So 30 days you have to do all your ground disturbing, all your grubbing, all your grading, all of that stuff. If you miss that window, you're probably going to hit some nests or turtles. Now, I'm going to add in on top of that the adults. So I have in this orange bar above a little green box. That's the green box where it's free to do ground disturbing and not worry about little baby turtles. So now I'm going to talk about adults and I'm going to focus on pond behavior. So ponds are this big blue line. So they're nesting. We went through this already. They're nesting in May, June, July. If the pond dries, in this case, just an example, the pond dries, they're in the upland. They can move into the upland. They estivate in the upland somewhere, within probably 500 meters of the pond. If the pond remains dry, they stay in the upland and they brumate. So they switch to estivate, move to brumate, but effectively it's the same behavior. They're not moving very much. They're not eating. They're staying in cover, usually under leaf litter, until the pond starts to rehydrate. So they'll generally move to the pond, say in February, which is about the beginning of the reproductive season, where they're going to want to reproduce. And if you remember, they only reproduce in water, so they got to get to the water in order to do that. And so now your window for adults not in the upland associated with ponds is about March to mid-May. So you have a bigger window, but if you have a reproductive population, your window is still that small one. Now, if we just go right into river habitat, creeks and rivers, it's essentially the same pattern and same timing with a little bit of change when the creek might dry out or there's flash flows. And so the window is about the same for the adults, whether it's pond habitat or creek habitat. But again, the narrow window for nestlings or hatchlings or post-emergent turtles is still mid-April tax day to about mid-Feb or mid-May. So 1 month of the year where you're not going to kill a bunch of turtles in the uplands. So irrespective of the adults being present in the uplands or not, their window is wider, but you're still going to have, if you have a reproductive population, and you likely do, the window is pretty narrow, and that's the one you have to focus on. So the adults will not be in the uplands during that earlier phase because they're in the water trying to reproduce. But again, doesn't really matter because if you have post-emergent turtles and they're in the uplands trying to make it to water, you can't be disturbing the upland without also acknowledging that you're going to kill a bunch of baby turtles. So you're going to remove the reproductive cohort for that year. And if you're okay with that, if you want to do that and you write that into your permit, hey, feel free. I mean, the adults are long-lived. They're going to reproduce every year. And if you wipe out one cohort 1 year, does that eliminate the population? No, it doesn't. But you just have to acknowledge it. You have to acknowledge you're going to be wiping out all the reproduction for that year. And this is the kind of thing you might see. So, you grade or you grub or, you're doing something to lay down gravel or you're making a road or you're putting in a construction pad or a laydown area or whatever, and you have not found all the nests because you're not going to, you're going to be knocking up turtles that are, either hatching or have hatched or were underground, and you're just going to kill them. And that's just the reality. So this may have been a dead turtle underground already. We don't even know. It was discovered well after it got grubbed up. It was just in some debris. And so this is the kind of thing you'll find, these little tiny baby, very sad turtles. Here's one that was hatching out of the egg when we were grading. So here's the story behind this. So if you look at the window I gave you, so it's mid-April to mid-May, we decided, okay, if we put in our exclusion fence in mid-April and we wait a year before we do our project, we will have everything in our exclusion fence will be turtle free. So that's what we did. We put up exclusion fencing. We assumed it's all going to be turtle free, but it turned out that patches of our exclusion fence where they had what is effectively like a door where the machinery and contractors and biologists can drive through, get into the work area, that was temporary fencing, and it did not include a little no-climb lip. The turtles just climbed right over the fence. We have a photo of one doing it. We don't know how many did, but enough did to make nests in our work area, despite the fact that we put up a fence a year before we did the ground disturbing, and we bladed and hit a turtle nest. This was in August. The turtle was literally hatching when we bladed the nest. So it was coming out of the nest, out of the egg, the moment we hit the nest. We killed it. It's not clear on this photo, but there's blood on the turtle. It was like fresh dead seconds after it got hit. And we hit the whole nest and knocked it up. This is on a site where I'd been working 12 years. We knew where they nested. We followed adults. We put the fence up a year in advance, and turtles still got in there, made a nest, and we killed the nest. So if we can do that at a site where we know they nest, we did the exclusion fencing a year in advance, we think we know how nesting occurs, we were still doing monitoring, it's going to happen on your site too. So it's best to say the likelihood of encountering nests while blading or grubbing or doing ground disturbance is 100%, and we're likely to kill turtles of an unknown number until we get our paper out with a little formula, and then you'll have a number to attach to it. But if it's 800, nobody's going to want you to do your project, but that's not up to me to decide. That's an agency thing. But it's going to happen. You're going to hit them. And we ran over 4 turtles on this project, even though we had exclusion fencing. Because coming and going into the site, turtles were trying to nest. They just got run over. So it's not going to be an easy project where you are either. And all of this is when it's just a species of concern. When it's federally listed, then the problem is just double. So we spend a lot of time trying to find these little turtles. The nests, the nest searches, the female, following the females around, trying to find little hatchlings, trying to protect all these guys. Can we protect them? I don't think we can very effectively unless you're putting up your exclusion fence that is non-climbable and has no openings a year in advance of your ground disturbance, and you're monitoring that fence, meaning you're not getting ground squirrels digging under it. It's still, standing straight up. It's not climbable. We highly recommend Animex fencing, not Urtec fencing. Urtec is climbable. It also degrades in the sun, easy to tear. We do not like Urtec. The owner of Urtec is always pissed at me when I do these things, but I don't really care. Animex, they don't pay me to say their fencing is good, is more expensive, lasts longer, is recyclable, and completely non-climbable. Again, I don't have stock in their company. They don't pay me. It's just better fencing. The only other fencing I would use would be plywood. It's not climbable by turtles. Still put it in a year in advance in April, because if you put it in before April, you're going to kill turtles putting it in. Monitor it. Do your ground disturbance the next year. And you really have to close off your work area. You have to have like hinged doors that are also not climbable that you close during the day and certainly at night, and have no gaps and keep the turtles out. That's how you're going to protect turtles. Anything short of that, you're going to be killing turtles. You just have to write that into your documentation. So when you call to apologize for killing turtles, you say, well, we anticipated killing, 80. course, they won't give you a permit for that, but the general point is we've been killing turtles for decades because we just didn't know, and no acknowledgement of it. Now we have to acknowledge it. So generally speaking, I showed you guys that packet of published papers I have, and I do have all 197 of those papers. And again, I can send them to anybody interested. They're all in PDF form. But for this presentation, I use these references. Most of these are about nesting and nesting activity and upland habitat. I would say if you can't read them all, there's the newest one, I haven't even put it on here, it's so new, is by me and my colleague Colleen DeVecchio, which is the one that talks about the maximum distance you can find turtle nests and the averages about all that stuff. It's a very short paper. I'll send that one out too for everybody. So I'll send out the DeVecchio paper and the one on the types of turtle nests that you'll find. They're both very short, very easy to read. A lot of these papers some of them can be quite long, but they're all informative. But I use all these, I know them all, most of them by heart. But again, they're available if you need them, just let me know. So I talked a little bit fast, so we're going to end up ending early, but I'm going to give it about another 15 minutes to talk about the field meeting, because I think the field meeting is really the value of this workshop. I am happy to share, this presentation. I will eventually put the recording online, making it available to you guys for sure, but anybody else. I put in this field meeting thing just to coordinate with you guys because I think it's that important. Ignore I'm sorry, we had to change field dates. We did not have to. That was for last year. Our project had its access changed. I'll pull that off. The field meeting is going to be in Martinez. I'm going to send out today the map to get there. So I'm going to write that down just so I do it. The map to get there is going to be a little bit tricky, but if you follow the map and the directions, you'll get there. If you follow Google, you'll end up at the Shell refinery, and there's no way to get to where we are, even though we're next door. So follow my map, and I'll actually give you a Google coordinate that'll get you to the gate of where we're going to go. Otherwise, they're going to try to get you through the Shell refinery, and Shell is not thrilled by that at all, so they won't let you through. So I'll give you that stuff, and I'll send it in the next hour or so. So the site we're going to go to is in Martinez. You can see the Shell refineries on the left side of the page here. There's a fence between us and them, so you're not getting in. This is the sewage detention tertiary treatment marsh that I'm talking about. The red line is about 30 acres. What you're seeing here is 6 different ponds, ranging from very small to very large. And the little dots, the weird shapes you see on the lower right, are little islands they've created. They have floating islands and stationary islands. All this was made for turtle habitat. Well, it initially was wildlife habitat, and then they did a big project to improve it for turtle habitat. So there are turtles on the site. We should see some. We're going to have access to all of it. We're going to park there and do a lot of walking, and we'll have a spot to eat, and there are bathrooms there. So access is super easy. There's not very much upland here. The maximum upland distance is about 40 or 50 feet. So it'll help us to find turtle nests, predated or otherwise, and actively nesting turtles, hopefully. No guarantee, but that's what we're going to look for. And this is a site I worked on for 12 years, so I know where they do nest, and we'll be looking for them. It really there's lots of complications involved in finding turtle nests, including things that you wouldn't expect, like, did they mow before the nesting season? You want to mow before the nesting season, because if you mow during the nesting season, you're going to be mowing turtles. But generally, I've asked them to mow in April, when there are no turtles in the upland. But if they didn't mow where we wanted, then that'll push the turtles to different areas. But I know where those areas are, so we're going to have an easy time. It's very flat, very easy walking. Again, we're going to use the turtles that I've monitored for over a decade out there. They're still all marked. I think only one is tagged, so we're not following any tagged animals, but there are lots of familiar turtles, and we'll see what we can do with that. We're going to walk around as probably a couple of groups. You should bring your binoculars because we're going to be looking for turtles using binoculars. It can be very buggy out there, and the mosquitoes are a weird species out there. They're kind of cream colored. They're really always pissed off. They seem like a yellow jacket attitude. So bug spray would not be frowned upon at all. We'd just have you wash your hands to get it off because we would rather have you handling the salmonella on the turtles. Here's just sort of a general idea of where, like last year, we got a bunch of turtles. So the white dots are red-eared sliders. The red dots are western pond turtles. So there are pockets at this site where we do find nests, and we will look in those pockets. And I'll help you guys to find those. We'll go around and look for as many as we can. Hopefully we'll find some nesting females. Every year we found a couple. Generally, if we find one, we keep walking. We don't stop and take photos because with a group, that is going to be a big predation experience for them, and the female will just dash away. We did have that last year where somebody just couldn't resist, stopped to take a photo, the female just ran, and no more nest. So we are going to encourage you to kind of keep moving, keep walking, and we'll do our best to just find a spot to just watch her. And if we can watch her, you will see what a nest looks like in the ground. We found one intact nest. That means a good nest that a turtle made and wasn't predated last year. I'll look in that spot too, because that might be a hot spot. This is what we might see, or what we're likely to see, predated nests. So predated nests are any nest where you see a little hole in the ground, and you're going to see egg fragments, either opened up eggs like these. I think that's a quarter in the center of the photo, so they're about 1.5 inches. These eggs would just be there, or they'll look like little scrolls. So if they look like they're this form, where it's an actual egg shape, the skunk, almost always a skunk, got it probably on day 2. If it's on day 1, they're going to look like scrolls. So very rolled up, very tight, like almost straight line pieces of eggs. And that's because they're super, super fresh and soft and flexible. And the skunk pulls them out and starts kind of pawing through them to get the yolk, and they just roll up. After a day, the whole day, they take their full-on shape and they harden, and that's what we're seeing. This is day 2 predation. We usually don't see day 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on predation events because the smell is dissipated and the skunks just can't seem to find them. Again, so we're going to meet in the field at this site. Again, I'll just repeat, it's a little bit buggy. There's lots of turtles, lots of other wildlife. We have mink, otter, lots of birds, lots and lots of Canada geese. There are fish present. There is staff present, but they usually just leave us to ourselves. We'll do, again, a lot of walking. I encourage you, maybe I'll use a different word. I would like you to bring your dinner with you, so whatever lunch you can make. What we're going to do is start at 3 o'clock. I'll give you maybe a 15, 20-minute little lecture. We'll walk around the marsh a few times. We'll come back to a little area that has picnic benches and bathrooms and sinks. We'll eat our dinner, and then we'll go out and do it all over again, and hopefully we'll spot some turtles that are nesting. Each day I'll repeat it, so each group will get the same experience, although the experience may be different because sometimes we find nesting females, sometimes we don't, but we always see turtles. I will be setting up traps tomorrow, actually. I'll be setting up traps so that we can pull those in and hopefully have some turtles to handle and photograph. And so you can see male versus female, palpate females if they have eggs, see their size based on their age. I'll show you how to age them. When I set up a turtle trap, I'll talk to you about why the traps I picked are the ones I picked. And also a lot about bait. So baiting in turtles, it's really either success or it's total failure. In this site, it's often successful because there's not a lot of food for turtles. So we put anything out there, they'll eat it. But I'll be using an old sock. So I go to Target and buy some very, very cheap socks. I'll get a can of wet cat food, shove it in the sock, tie a little rope on the top, and then I'll tie a drumstick, a chicken leg, to that bag, and I hang it in my trap so that the bait sits in the water. The cat food will put out an oil slick and a lot of stink, and that will attract the turtles. And then the drumstick, the chicken leg, is for them to eat. So if they make it into the trap, they might be there all day. I want them to have something to eat, and they'll turn that chicken leg into a bone. So we will likely get some turtles. I think you should expect that. I've never been skunked. The most we've gotten was maybe 35. The average is probably about 12. So we're likely to see turtles, both species and probably hybrids. So that I can almost guarantee some predated nests, and then we'll hopefully see some turtles, female turtles nesting. It really depends on us as a group. Can we find them? They're going to be out there doing it, but they're trying to hide it, and so can we find them? And hopefully we can. So anything about turtle nesting, turtle scheduling, or the field event? I should say, before you guys start asking, we can't change people around from like Sunday to Saturday or Friday to Saturday or whatever, unless you guys find somebody to switch with. And if you need to switch, I can send you everybody's email and you can beg. But we're restricted by size based on the agency. So the agency wants me to have 12 people or maybe 13 people per instructor for turtles. And so I can't just like pour everybody from Sunday onto Friday or whatever you choose. So we're going to keep the schedule the way it is unless you really need to change. And then I'm going to have you find somebody to switch with you. Otherwise, I would hate to see you miss the field portion because that's really the important portion. Any questions at all?
Jeff, we probably just a reminder here for liability forms. We need to send those to you.
Yes, thank you so much, Thor. So if you have not sent your liability form to me, please do. I have to turn them in on Friday. There'll still be people there working, and the administrator will want me to bring those in and hand them to her completely. So that means everybody from Saturday and Sunday has to email them to me. And if you haven't sent it to me for the Friday meeting, please do. But if you still don't, I'll have some blank ones and you can sign them. If you didn't do it by Saturday, for the Saturday or Sunday group, you'll get a nasty email from me for sure. And I may or may not give you trouble in the field or lock you out of the gate. I'll have to decide. But please do send that. It's really important. And if you don't have a scanner anymore, nobody does streams, just take a photo with your camera and just send the photo to me. That works too. But I really appreciate it if you would do that. They're nervous about these things because they think turtles will bite, or a coyote will get you, or you'll try to grab an otter or whatever. So thanks for that, Thor. I really appreciate it.
Hey Jeff, can you go over the colors that pond turtles are sensitive to again, so we know what to wear in the field?
Yeah, I
Thank you.
appreciate that too. They're sensitive to orange, red, and yellow. So if you think about turtles and the colors you see a turtle, like red-eared slider, it's got red on it. Painted turtles got red and yellow and orange. All of our turtles can see those colors really well. So we generally use blue, tan, green, brown, sort of drab colors. You don't need to wear camo, although we've done that in the past. It does pose a problem if you're doing turtle monitoring. You have to wear an orange vest or even the big green flashy vest. You can spook turtles well before you see them, so they're very sensitive to those colors. But yeah, something drab, that's going to be the best thing at all. If you don't have anything like that, just wear what you have to wear. Some of these turtles are used to us, and many of them will be in a trap, so we won't have to worry so much. But if you're looking for nests, you do not want to wear bright colors at all. That will spook the turtle very early. Thanks, Jessica. I appreciate that one.
Hey Jeff, I have a question about the period of time. You said that they lay usually two clutches. Is it known how long between those two clutches?
Yeah, you guys are doing great with your questions. So it's about 4 weeks. So the female has to generate new eggs. So all those follicles have to erupt, and so it's about 4 weeks. So the females that lay eggs in late May will lay another clutch at the end of June. If they've laid eggs in, say, mid-June, they're probably not going to lay another clutch. And on average, so the average number of clutches per year is 1.4. So typically it's one clutch. And then, you know, about 50% of them lay another clutch, and usually older females.
Okay, thank you. And then, sorry, I have a second question. Is it typically like if they're disturbed X number of times while building a nest, and they just haven't laid, is there a period of time where they can hold those eggs and then they're just not viable anymore?
Yeah, the eggs are viable, but it's about the female's retention ability. So she has about a week window. So if she's trying to make a nest and she's getting disturbed by a coyote every time, or an otter or us, and she can't pull that off within about a week, she's just going to shoot them out right in the water.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
And we see that when we know she's at that point where we, you know, catch some turtles and put them in a bucket, and you look in your bucket and there's 6 or 8 eggs in there. You're like, oh my God, we just lost all those eggs.
Yeah, thank you.
You can never have too many questions, and even if they're project related, I'm happy to work on those too. But our day will be pretty casual in the field. A lot of just, you know, sort of strolling around looking for things. You can ask questions there too, and then most of you, like people like Thor and Jessica and others who have known me from other workshops, know, you know, you have my email. You can send photos or ask me questions or whatever. I'm open to any of that stuff. I feel like once you join us in a workshop, we're connected, and you're more than welcome to send questions that way too. If you don't want to say, you know, oh, I have this project and here's what's going on. No problem, just send an email. Okay, so I'm going to send a map. I'm going to send 2 papers. One will be on the maximum distance turtle nests can be from water, and the other will be on the type of turtle nests. They're both short, just a couple pages each, easy to read before you get into the field. I'm going to bring show and tell items with us. I'll bring some eggs, some different turtle, you know, carcasses. They're all dried up, telemetry units, and tools and things like that, just so you guys can see what that's all about. I'll have traps in the field already. What we'll do is on Friday, I'll have you guys meet at a certain spot. If you're in the Saturday and Sunday group, I'll have to be at the entry gate. So that will mean as you meet me at the entry gate, I will say, okay, follow this little map, and you'll get to the picnic benches. If you could stay at the picnic benches, that would be great. In the past, we've had people who just start hiking around in the marsh, and it disturbs turtles, and they you know, they find a trap that I put out there and they start hauling it in. We don't want any of that. We want to do this as a group. I'll remind you on those days, but I look forward to meeting up with you guys at this site. It's very, very industrial, but it should also show you that turtles will be fine, just given the opportunity to bask and feed and lay some eggs. Okay, so if there are no more questions, I'm happy to end a little bit early, and we'll see you guys either Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. If there's any questions, I think I sent my cell phone number to you. You can text me. That's an easy way to reach me. And if you didn't get it, or you lose emails quickly, or you delete them, I'm going to just share it with you, and maybe you can write it down or type it into your phone. It's 209-815-5660. Okay. Well, I think that went okay, at least on my end. So we'll see you guys either Friday, Saturday, or Sunday.